The administration pushes for the designation after Anthropic refused to give the Pentagon unrestricted access to its AI systems. The company said it feared the technology could be used for autonomous weapons or mass surveillance. Nicole D'Antonio has more.
The judge basically saying the Pentagon was unfairly punishing the company for criticizing the government. Now, in a statement, Anthropic said, quote, "Our focus remains on working productively with the government to ensure all Americans benefit from safe, reliable AI." No response yet from the Trump administration.
There is a new deal in the Senate to restore funding to most, but not all, of the Department of Homeland Security. Early on Friday morning, via voice vote, the Senate passed the funding piecemeal to pay for all the department's agencies except ICE and parts of CBP. For more than 40 days, Democrats have refused to agree to the funding for DHS unless Republicans would agree to reforms at ICE. Senate Majority Leader John Thune spoke at a little after 2 a.m. and blamed Democrats for the failing to agree to offers of reform that were put forward.
They wanted reforms to Immigrations and Custom Enforcement, and Republicans offered to give that to them.
These measures do not include any of the reforms demanded by Democrats. This will now have to be approved by the House and then would head to President Trump for his signature. That's the latest news. Traffic and weather on the way. I'm Mason Fleming, WTN News. Roads are still clear as we're heading into town this morning. Keep an eye out for a little traffic around BNA off Donaldson Pike at I-40. Still got a lot of traffic going over in that area. I'm Mason Fleming.
Show's morning news on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Good morning to your friends. Hope you are doing well and welcome on in to a Friday. You know, I got up this morning and this is what happens sometimes when you do your prep so incredibly early. But I got up at midnight and I had a whole segment prepared on how we were now at day 42 of the TSA shutdown, so on and so forth. Lo and behold, the Senate now has unanimously passed the DHS funding deal And both sides are now claiming victory, and both sides are also telling us that the other side lost. So I'm going to give you my take on this whole thing. But it is good news. And by the way, Sam, I'm in, if you know what I'm talking about. We're trying to get everything all set up. We're running a little bit behind this morning just because of the breaking news. But, Sam, I should be okay now. So as far as being able to show folks video. So you know what happened last night, right? I think the Democrats panicked, and here's why. Because Donald Trump had come out and he had said that he was going to, through, basically an emergency order, he was going to try to get the TSA agents paid. And the Democrats, they absolutely freaked out. They're like, oh, crap. Okay, we cannot possibly have Donald Trump be the hero in this whole thing. And so they decided to allow the vote to go through. The Republicans, I think, had had enough of all of this as well. And so this morning, I think it was about, 2 or 3 o'clock this morning when they finally did, in the Senate, decide to pass the bill to fund TSA. And again, to me, a couple of big things. Number one, the Democrats panicked. And so they said, okay, what we're going to need to do is we can't let Donald Trump run around being the hero in getting TSA paid. And ultimately, and basically what Donald Trump did was he was going to move some funds around to get TSA funded and to get the agents paid, which is great. And I wish, to be perfectly candid, I wish he would have done that earlier. But the Democrats said we cannot possibly have Donald Trump be the hero, not only to the TSA agents, but also to the American people who were stuck in those lines. And I think that the Democrats know that they were losing the narrative. They were losing the news game. I want to play this piece of audio for you. We'll get into some of the details here, and I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants on this. This is but one example that is out there of the Democrats realizing that they were indeed losing the media, because even CNN, and I've got this audio, this is CNN, and you have them even questioning the Democrats as to, okay, so wait a minute, why exactly is it that you're not allowing a vote to fund TSA? Because, ICE is already funded. Listen to this.
But isn't ICE funded? It was funded in the big, beautiful bill.
Yeah, this is, by the way, Eric Swalwell.
So why don't we just fund TSA?
So she asked the question, Cassie, is it Hunt, I think her name is? But anyway, on CNN, and she asks Eric Swalwell, okay, so why don't you, ICE is already funded, through the big, beautiful bill, so why the holdup? Swalwell says, well, why don't we then just fund TSA? Well, that's a good question. The reason why they wouldn't allow TSA to be funded is because they wanted those ICE reforms. And so they wanted to basically decapitate ICE. And I think this may have been one of those moments where you had the Democrats say, okay, we're even losing CNN.
Yeah, well, it's par for the course for Swalwell's logic, right? Like, I wasn't sleeping with a Chinese spy. It was just a Chinese woman.
Sure.
I'm taking the important part off the table. Like, fun. Well, yeah, we could fund TSA. I'll compartmentalize in that aspect.
Well, you had the Democrats, and essentially what they were doing and what they will continue to do is they're trying to obfuscate what they're really doing. They'll just say in this blanket, statement, well, then why don't we fund TSA? Well, the reason why we can't fund TSA, Democrats, is because you wouldn't allow it until Donald Trump came out and said, oh, yeah, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go ahead and we're going to use executive orders to move some funds around to make sure that the TSA agents ultimately don't lose a second full paycheck.
But isn't ICE funded? It was funded in the big, beautiful bill.
So why don't we just fund TSA?
Well, in the realities that in the offer that Senate Republicans brought to you a few days ago, there was a plan to put funding for enforcement at the border, plus, of course, Republicans want the SAVE Act in a reconciliation package, and fund the rest of it.
That's right.
And yet Democrats said no.
Yeah. Even CNN understands that the Democrats basically were preventing progress on this bill and the payment of, TSA agents and so forth from getting through. So now the question is this. The package approved overnight included money for TSA, Transportation Security Administration, ensuring the officers receive pay after more than a month without full paychecks. They also funded FEMA, the U.S. Coast Guard, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and customs officers at ports of entry. And it is important to note, the Democrats did not get the reforms that they wanted within ICE. Now, I do find it interesting that for the Republicans, I mean, they're going to be pointing their fingers at the Democrats, and the Democrats are pointing their fingers at Republicans. Who won? Who lost? Now it's all about the spin game. But we still have, I think it's 75, let me see, how much? Will you look up for me, Sam, how much money does ICE currently have in their coffers because they were funded through the big, beautiful bill. And I'm trying to remember how much it is. Again, Trump was about to go with an executive order to fund TSA, and the Democrats didn't want him to be a hero in that instance. I think that is a big part of that conversation. So, you know, for me, I think for the Republicans, I do believe that this is a victory for them. I do believe that for the Republicans, they did understand that the Democrats were looking very bad at this. You know, Chuck Schumer, one of the things that Schumer is trying to say out there is that his caucus, they stuck together. Well, they did, but that's not necessarily a good thing. And by the way, Senator John Fetterman did not actually stand by your side. He was against the Democrats for holding up the paychecks of TSA and putting the American people in danger all along.
So ICE and CBP are funded separately. The total at disposal at the signing of the bill was projected to be $85 billion overall. That's a supplemental plus a base.
Okay.
Which makes ICE the highest funded U.S. law enforcement agency, larger than the FBI.
Well, I mean, I hate to say it, but it has to be because of what Biden did.
Well,
right?
and
so
CBP is not too far behind, somewhere between 58 and 64 billion separately.
Okay, now I've got an assignment for you. How long will that money last? Because ultimately, that money is going to be spent. And so now we need to, at some point, refund ICE and refund the Border Patrol as well. And so if the Democrats end up getting either the Senate or the House of Representatives, we know that they're going to try to dissolve ICE. I mean, that's obviously what they're going to try to do.
So, which is why I think it's funded the way it is, because Grok has it that their annual budget is around $10 billion. So if you're funded for the next 4 years at approximately 75 to 85 billion,
yep,
you got plenty of money.
You got plenty of money.
Yeah.
And especially when you consider the fact that even though we've got 20 million illegal aliens that we've got to track down, especially the criminals, which clearly, as we know, because of what we've seen in Chicago, we've had another innocent American killed in New York. One of these guys, I forget where he's from, but another one of these illegal aliens threw a 83-year-old military veteran in front of a train, right? So clearly we still have some bad guys, and I would implore the Trump administration, okay, look, we understand you want to get a lot of people deported. The self-deportation, that has been a big success story. However, we still have bad guys that are out there that need to be deported. And so we do have actual criminals, and we need to get those people out of here. So we do need to continue to fund ICE. We do need to continue to fund the Border Patrol. President Trump has effectively closed the southern border. That is a good thing, but we still have a lot of cleanup to do from the Biden administration. Got a little bit more on this. It is 5:15. Time to check the roads on WTN.
Roads are still pretty open as we're coming into town. Like I said earlier, keeping an eye on that traffic buildup that could come this morning around B&A on Donaldson Pike around I-40. But other than that, roads are smooth sailing as we're heading into town.
All right, very good. Thank you. It is 5:16. Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7. WTN and Super Text line is open, 615-737-9986, 615-737-WWTN. As far as your forecast goes, just very quickly, we have for your Friday, 80% chance of rain and showers. Is that what you have, Mason? I want to make sure I've got the right, because
let me check.
Usually Sam has given. Oh wait, we're off to a flying start this morning.
Yeah, we're expecting a little bit of rain around this afternoon, around 12:30 to 1 o'clock.
Mostly cloudy and breezy today. A couple of afternoon showers, a thunderstorm, high of 71. Saturday, a high of 61. Dry air. Watch for a fire risk as well. Warming up to 75 with breezes on Sunday. Appreciate you listening to Nashville's Morning News. Thank you, Sam, for getting me my weather. All right, so John Thune telling reporters Friday morning that Republicans had rejected earlier efforts to fund the Department of Homeland Security in pieces because they were hoping for a deal to fund the entire department. Thune, though, said they abandoned that effort and pivoted to the new strategy that we saw this morning when it became clear that Democrats would not accept the reforms Republicans were willing to make to ICE in exchange for passing the entire Homeland Security Appropriations Bill. He says this was all about reforms and they were all on the table. Thune says basically that door kind of closed and they started to take the funding for ICE off the table. He says, I just think their base was demanding that they not fund ICE. So for me, when I look at this whole thing, I'm just glad that ICE is going to be funded. CBP has been funded. Both are funded for, we figured out 3, 4, 5 years. Republicans are now trying to get more funding for ICE in future years, I guess, in reconciliation. The big news here, TSA agents will be funded, will be paid, and those lines at the airport, they will start to shorten. I wonder how quickly they can get all of that, fixed. The lines through security.
Well, CNN saw a post. They were covering an airport, and they had ICE and CBP there helping, and the lines cleared out. People left the airport.
Yeah, I'd be willing to bet that you're going to have very quickly a lot of these TSA agents returning to work, and they're going to get paid. I don't know when they get paid. It's the end of the month. I don't know. Do they get paid at the end of the month? I know that they were coming up with a second paycheck. Remember, by the way, this isn't done. I mean, this goes to the House of Representatives now. So this is not done. And I don't know if there's going to be any fighting in the House. The Senate is now on vacation. So the Senate has gone on a recess, I'll call it recess, for a couple of weeks. And Mike Johnson and the Republicans, they're not real happy with how this whole thing went down. I've got some fire audio from Mike Johnson from yesterday. Oh, my Lord, he was angry. So we're going to play that audio as well. I've got some, just for craps and giggles, you know how much we all hate Hakeem Jeffries and how he's just kind of a joke, right?
I love the Timu Obama moniker. It fits so well.
The Timu Obama moniker. This is Hakeem Jeffries. He puts on, speaking of monikers, he puts on this sort of tough guy facade. You know when he does that? He puts on the tough guy facade. So this was Hakeem Jeffries, and he is challenging the Republicans. Come at me, bros.
But at the same period of time, immigration enforcement in this country should be fair, just, and humane. If you have something to say to me, you can say it right now. That's what I thought.
If I was in the House of Representatives, I would have loved to have seen, former military guys, maybe Matt Van Epps, stand up and say, yeah, Hakeem, I got something to say to you. You're a piece of crap. It's your party that's keeping TSA unfunded. It's your party that is causing this mess. It is your party, Hakeem Jeffries, who have been trying to defund ICE, defang ICE, make ICE less impactful, and that is why we have the innocent Americans being killed at the hands of these criminal, illegal aliens, because it is your party that has been doing whatever you can not to cooperate with ICE and federal authorities. That's why we had that woman killed in Chicago. That's why we had that 83-year-old man shoved in front of a train earlier this week as well. Hakeem, if I had your ass on the phone, that's what I'd say to you right now. And I'm not being a tough guy. I'm being a pissed off American because I'm seeing the impacts and the effects of what they are doing to the American people. So he can piss off. I would love to have 2 minutes on the phone with Hakeem Jeffries.
And here I was willing to settle for a Senator Kennedy quip.
You can play a Senator Kennedy quip if you'd like.
Well, just for him to stand up and be like, Hakeem, you're the reason they have instructions on the shampoo bottle.
That's exactly right. Hakeem, oh God. You know what? I hope and pray that the Democrats don't get control of the House of Representatives. Can you imagine this guy as Speaker again? Now, there's talk that people within the Democrat apparatus, that they're not happy, actually, with Hakeem Jeffries. I don't know how true that is or not, but there might be some other people waiting in the wings. I doubt it, though. We'll have to see what happens in the midterm elections. But, you know, if I were one of the Republicans in the House, I absolutely would have stood up and said, yeah, I have something to say to you. You know, where I would love to see like a Mark Wayne Mullins in the House of Representatives. You know, get up, take off the wedding ring, and say, "Yeah, you want to talk? Let's talk. If you want to do more than talk, let's do that as well."
I'll show you my club foot.
That's exactly.
Put it right up your ass.
All right, moving right along. 522 on Super Talk 99.7. Mason's got the news at 5:30. Mason.
More on the Department of Homeland Security and bomb threats at the Air Force Base. All that and more coming at 5:30 a.m. in the news on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
528 Super Talk 99.7 WTN 615-737-9986. The Super Text line is open, very active today. Thank you very much. A few comments. Akeem Jeffries is the Goodwill Obama. All right.
Oh, but like Goodwill does have some cool stuff.
Goodwill has some very cool stuff.
Yeah, Temu is a bunch of fake plasticky crap.
I don't know if I've ever been inside of a Temu. Is a Temu, do they have stores or just online?
It's a Chinese-owned Amazon, essentially.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever ordered anything off of Temu, but whatever it is, yeah, okay, so if you want to talk about, plasticized crap, you could talk about Temu. 4702 says, let's see here. Damn, Dan, you sound like all the typical liberals. Trump couldn't have done that earlier because it had to be an emergency. It became an emergency yesterday when the Senate didn't get it passed and they were leaving for recess. That's how it became an emergency. Because what I said was, Trump had come out and he had said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and deem this an emergency and have TSA funded with other funds and just, move some money around, which is what Trump ultimately did yesterday. And I believe that was the impetus for the Democrats to say, oh, crap, we can't let Donald Trump be the hero. However, with my retort to that would be, you know what, we've had a couple of weeks of like 4 or 5 hour long lines at the airport. He could have, if he wanted to, deemed it an emergency then, but I mean, ultimately, I feel like, and I said back to 4702, I feel like we're quibbling. Bottom line is, I like what Donald Trump did. I think that the Republicans gave the Democrats enough time to hang themselves, if you will. So there is that part of the equation too. It's all politics. It's all a narrative game as well. But, thankfully, though, it's all been now funded. And Mike Johnson and the Republicans in the House, now they've got to grapple with this thing, and we'll have to see ultimately what happens. But I like the fact that it's funded. I do believe that the Republicans are the ones that won in this back and forth. I think that the Democrats did not get the reforms that they were demanding. We still have $75 to $80 billion that ICE and CBP have at their disposal, and we'll see ultimately what happens down the road. It is 5:30 on WTN.
It's 5:30 a.m. I'm Mason Fleming with your top stories. Full forecast of traffic in 5 minutes. The Senate early this morning passed a bill to fund most of the Department of Homeland Security, including TSA, after a week-long shutdown that caused long delays for travelers at the U.S. airports. Funding has been held up over Democrats' demands for immigration enforcement reforms. ABC's Ali Pecorin reports more.
The Senate acted on an agreement that is a little bit of a win for both sides of the aisle, but still leaves some pretty big glaring areas. They passed a bill that would fund TSA, but a few other areas too, including the Coast Guard, FEMA, that's emergency response, and CISA, which is the organization that does cyber infrastructure security. However, it very critically left out one big area, which is funding for ICE, as well as some aspects of Customs and Border Patrol.
Bomb threats at the Air Force. The FBI now says a brother and sister have been charged in connection with an alleged explosive device found near the visitor center at MacDill Air Force Base in Florida last week. Officials say it was planted on March 10th, and soon afterward, a 911 call was made about the bomb on the base, but wasn't found until almost a week later. Officials say the suspects, Alan Zhang and Anne-Marie Zhang, fled to China after the bomb was planted. ABC News Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas says Anne-Marie Zhang then returned to the United States and was arrested.
We heard from the U.S. Attorney for the Middle District of Florida, and he said, quote, "This could have been potentially very deadly and could have caused, quote, significant damage to people that were in range." The FBI was also at this particular press conference, and the special agent in charge said that this, quote, was a viable device.
And trouble in the air. A close call at California Airport between a passenger jet and a military helicopter is now under investigation. Hannah Batah has the details.
This morning, the FAA investigating a near disaster in Southern California. A National Guard helicopter on a training mission crossing in front of a United Airlines plane attempting to land at John Wayne Airport. The jet was carrying 168 passengers and crew. The chopper came so close, it triggered the plane's anti-collision alert system.
That's the latest news, traffic, and weather. Up next, I'm Mason Fleming, WTN News. Starting to see a little buildup on 24 around Thompson Lane, but otherwise all the roads heading into town seem pretty open this morning. Keep an eye on that traffic around B&A. I'm Mason Fleming.
.537 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. How are you, friends? And I hope you're doing well. And welcome on in to A Friday, and as far as your weather goes, mostly cloudy, breezy, a couple of afternoon showers and a thunderstorm, a high of 71. Saturday, a high of 61, very dry air. Fire risk as well on Saturday and Sunday, warming up to 75 with breezes on Sunday. And appreciate you listening to Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I think if there's one thing pretty much every Republican or conservative can agree on is that Hakeem Jeffries is quite the dolt. And I think for me, the more that you see of Hakeem Jeffries, then the more that he tries to portray himself as a tough guy in front of the House of Representatives, where he is the minority leader. I think the more ridiculous that he looks. And so for me, I love that he's saying, if you got something to say to me, say it. I would have loved, and as I said previous to the break, I would have loved if somebody would have stood up to Hakeem Jeffries. I love this. By the way, TMZ, right? So TMZ has now basically said, listen, if you see, oh, by the way, just talking about just one final thing on the Senate last night, late last night, if you're just waking up and you're just joining us, the Senate last night has now approved funding for TSA and some of these other agencies. So the agents ultimately will get paid. The Democrats did not get the reforms that they wanted. So now, I think that's good news for the Republicans. Everybody, of course, it's great news for the TSA agents, and both sides are pointing at the other side saying, you won, you lost, whatever. But now, Congress is supposed to have some time off. It's the recess that they usually have around late March, April. They go home for a couple of weeks, whatever it is that they're going to do. So TMZ has now, and granted, this was before the TSA agents were ultimately, as they are now going to be funded as long as the House passes the bill. But TMZ basically came out and they said, hey, and I've got some video here. If you see one of our fine members of Congress out on vacation somewhere while the TSA agents are not getting paid and the American people are suffering in really long lines, if you see a picture of them, I don't know, out and about, if you see them out there, take a picture.
I want to talk to everybody in our audience right now that if anybody goes to Disney World with their family for spring break, or goes to a beach somewhere or anywhere on vacation, and you see one of the 535 members of Congress, take a picture and send it to us at TMZ. We will post that picture on our website, on our social media, and we will put it on our television shows. We want to show what they are doing at your expense. And we want everybody to hear that, and we are waiting for those pictures.
Hey, Sam, you want to see Chris Christie on the beach again?
I'm good.
Are you sure?
If I want to see...
No, it wasn't Chris Christie. Who was it? Yes, it was Chris Christie. I mean, you know what I'm doing? I'm getting Chris Christie and the Chicago governor, J.B. Pritzker. I'm getting them confused. And neither one, by the way, are members of Congress or House of Representatives or the Senate, whatever. But who would you most not want to see lounging around on the beach?
Chuck Schumer.
Chuck Schumer?
Yeah. I watched a lot of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And, Danny DeVito's shirtless for a lot of that. So I've seen...
Danny DeVito was shirtless in that show?
Oh, a lot. A couple episodes he was full-blown naked.
Most of the show, yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
There's an episode where he crawls out of a couch covered in baby oil and no clothes.
Why? Like, forgive me for getting so off topic, but why?
It's the birth of Danny DeVito.
Yeah. It's...
What does his character do that he's always naked and apparently covered in baby oil?
Owns a bar and has 2 adult children that are delinquents.
Which, by the way, I, of course, am horrified at that notion, but that's like a weekend at Sam's house. Naked and covered in baby oil. What?
What? Hold up. Hold up now.
I'm just saying,
Don't didify me, okay?
The second I went down the road of baby oil, I thought, that's like a Diddy joke. So, no, moving right along.
But no, because of that, I could imagine that Schumer is of a similar build. What about you?
Me?
Least likely would like to see on the beach.
Yeah, in a whatever. You know, we could. I'm not going to do who we most want. I don't know. You know what? I mean, remember when Nancy Pelosi, when they had Nancy Pelosi, they caught her on the beach and she was in a bathing suit and she filled out the bathing suit. Remember that, Mason? Mason's like, keep me out of this, man.
Shut
up.
Anyway, whatever. So
I said least likely, to want to see, not most, Dan.
Listen, some guys like that. Older women and in bathing suits and stuff. I think that's like a kink, is it not?
Stop projecting, Dan.
Shut up, Mason. You know what, Mason? Your next newscast better be stellar because you're out here harassing the host.
Dan, that's what you invite whenever you have me on.
I was about to say, you opened the door to that one.
Yeah.
You said Mason's staying quiet. I thought I'd pipe in and...
No, it's all good. It's all good. Well, yeah, you know what? Super. Let's ask the super texters. What member of the Senate or the House of Representatives would you most not want to see lounging on the beach, as TMZ is basically asking for a vacation fatwa on politicians in Washington, D.C. Get a picture of them on vacation at Disney World, on the beach, whatever, as they are on your dime going out and having a good time, while at the time they did the video, the TSA is not funded. Pelosi had some big old fun bags, 48.59. Thank you for making me say that. Mitch McConnell.
Shut up.
Yeah, Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell on the beach wearing his Depends.
Oh no.
Dan, I would definitely not want to see Maxine Waters on the beach.
Oh, no.
Now, if you're Maxine Waters and you go on the beach, do you take your wig off? What?
I mean...
Listen, I learned for the first time on this radio station that she wears a wig. I didn't know that.
Probably because, the winds are typically higher on the beach and it would carry, her off with it.
Oh, you know what? 5803, thank you. Jerry Nadler. You know what happened to me earlier?
Oh, that takes the cake.
I said Chris Christie, but I meant Jerry Nadler.
Oh.
Because
he's also got a pot belly.
They're both very large individuals. But Jerry Nadler is who I meant to say when I said Chris Christie, because Chris Christie is the fat Democrat that was caught on the beach.
Either one of them, I could see seagulls picking at leftover donuts, out of their chest hair or something.
Yeah, but Chris Christie's a Republican. I think Chris Christie's a Republican.
I'm not the one putting these words in your mouth.
No, I know. He is a Republican. I used to like Chris Christie, actually. And he got all kinds of weird, later on. I think Chris Christie is one of those guys who, ran for president, lost. He and Donald Trump were great friends. And then they completely went south. And then Christie he really did go to the dark side. Chris Christie did. He did go to the dark side. But Jerry Nadler, Bernie Sanders in diapers and mittens.
I need you to rub some sunscreen on my back.
Rashida Tlaib.
Ugh. Yeah, crazy never looks good in a bikini.
Oh, 6363 says the trans one? I forget who
Tim
the trans
McBride.
Tim McBride. That's right. Let's see here. Rocky says, thanks, Dan. I just threw up in my mouth. I'm sorry. Hirono. Mazzy Hirono. That whack job out of Hawaii. Good Lord, she's insane. Yeah, there's a lot. Mostly we're getting Maxine Waters, Jerry Nadler, Nancy Pelosi, and that picture. Remember yesterday Jason said, I forget what we were talking about, but Jason offered to send in a picture of him in a Speedo. And he says, yeah, man, it's that picture of me in a Speedo from yesterday not sounding so bad right now. Whatever, moving right along. Let's see here. I want to play the audio. You know how House Speaker Mike Johnson is kind of pasty? So, and I'm not, bashing him. I mean, he's very fair complected, if you will.
He's a rare city boy out of Louisiana.
Yes, that's exactly right. Well, I thought this particular audio bite, and it's a video, was funny because he got so mad yesterday. Mike Johnson did. He's probably even madder this morning waking up because now he's realizes that he's got to deal with this Senate bill that is now coming back over to the House. But and basically they're going to have to, pass this thing as is, or it's got to go back to the Senate. And there's just no way that's going to happen. But his face actually got red yesterday. He was so angry. His face actually got red as he was talking about his frustration with the Democrats.
Hill is willing to fund all of the security and safety of the American people. We cannot believe it's come to that, but it has.
If the Senate gets that through the Senate, will you put it on the floor?
We'll have to see. We have to solve the problem, and it's very sad that Democrats are not interested in doing that.
Mr.
Yes.
Speaker, does that mean that you're not in favor of breaking the DHS funding bill apart, just funding TSA, just funding FEMA, having individual votes on each section?
We have never been in favor of breaking the bill up. Why? Because it's one of the 12 separate appropriations bills that is the most basic function of Congress to fund the government. And we did it in a bipartisan, bicameral manner. Remember, the contents of that bill were decided upon earlier by Democrats until they decided to hold the American people hostage in their long lines at the airports and with the safety of everybody on the line to make a political point. It is shameful. There is no way for them to defend this to the American people. And breaking it out I think it puts an exclamation point on what they've tried to do here. It's shameful. So many people have been through so many hardships because of this nonsense. And what we're concerned about is people may actually be hurt. More people harmed by criminal illegal aliens than are being protected by the Democrat Party. And we're sick of it.
And off he goes. By the way, people reminding me, thank you. Tony says, hey, Dan, don't forget frumpy, angry Hillary on the beach. Betty says, Jasmine Crockett, see those eyelashes take off like seagulls. I think Jasmine Crockett could probably, fan people on the beach with her eyelashes. Jasmine, it's so hot. Can you come blink on me?
You talking about Jasmine Crockett in the 5 o'clock hour with Mason and I here never goes well, so let's...
Anyway... Jasmine Crockett could probably take out a few seagulls with the eyelashes, too, if she wanted to. She's so long she could, bat them out of the sky.
Well, they'd probably just hear her talking and be, soundproofed away.
Wait a minute. Is that the seagulls squawking, or is that Jasmine Crockett speaking? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Nice.
By the way, people fairly enough saying, Dan, we would not want to see you on the beach. I wear a bathing shirt. Thank you very much. I have the decency to wear a bathing shirt.
Okay.
I don't think they have a circus tent big enough to put on like a Chris Christie or a Jerry Nadler.
Yeah. And then it becomes a hazard because then those things get, they get waterlogged to a degree and it can pull you down. And, when you are in that particular territory.
Ben says, would love to see Lauren Boebert and AOC on the beach. See, I knew it would go into, that, and I don't want to go down that road of who you would like to see on the, this whole stupid thing is from TMZ, basically calling out their own little fatwa on members of the House and the Senate, politicians on vacation, snap a picture. We want to be able to take a picture of them when they're not back in Washington, D.C. doing their jobs. And now I don't know if they're still going to be doing that now that the Senate has finally done their job and passed this bill to fund TSA and some of these other agencies. We went through all the details earlier. And so now it's up to the House of Representatives. Do you know what's so stupid about the super text line? It's like, I will throw down whatever hardcore stories or analysis or whatever on, whatever the news of the day is. It isn't until I start going down Stupidville that people really start responding, which is fine because, that's what it is. Well, it is Stupidville. We're literally talking about which member of Congress would you most not want to see on the beach in a bathing suit or otherwise. And, okay, Jim says, what about Nancy Mace? Right, I get it. We're done. 5:52. 5:52 on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7. Mason has the news coming up at 6. Mason.
I don't know if I want to follow that, but deadlines push back in near-sky collisions. All that more coming up at 6 a.m. in the news on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
5:57, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. By the way, coming up at 6:35, we've got General Dick Newton. He is going to be joining us, going to talk a lot about what's going on with the Iran war. There was a big headline in the Daily Mail, and I'm going to ask him about this, where they're talking about how Iran has 1 million fighters just waiting for our American troops. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about Carg Island with the general as well. And also Joe Kent, Donald Trump's former counterterrorism chief. And we'll talk about his appearance on Sean Ryan's podcast and what he had to say. So we have a lot to get to. Real quickly, we've all spoken about how apparently the new Ayatollah out there for Iran is gay. So President Trump was on with the Five yesterday, and they asked him about that.
Suggested that we'd knocked out Ayatollah Jr. Have we? And did the CIA tell you that Ayatollah Jr. is gay?
Well, they did say that, but I don't know if it was only them. I think a lot of people are saying that, which puts them off to a bad start in that particular country. You know, I sort of have to smile to myself when I see people trying to defend the Palestinian regime for women for Palestine, but they kill women if you don't wear a certain if you don't wear a certain cloth all over your face, you have no chance of living.
Hijab. So he didn't really take the bait. It doesn't sound like, 'cause I just heard this, for the first time now. He didn't take the bait.
And, when I look at gays for Palestine, but they kill gays. They kill them instantly. They throw them off buildings. And I'm saying, who are the gays for Palestine? And they have a significant amount of gays for Palestine. Now, I think I did very well with the gay vote, okay? I even played the gay national anthem as my walk-off, okay, for my campaign. And I think it probably helped me, but I did great with no Republicans ever gotten the gay vote like I did, and I'm very proud of it. I think it's great. Perhaps it's because I'm from New York City. I don't know, but the gay national anthem was my walk-off, and I think it probably had. But think of it, gays for Palestine, but they kill gays in Palestine. So when they hear that, I think probably we can talk them out of it. It shouldn't be too hard.
Yeah, it's very, very bizarre. Very bizarre indeed, the whole gays for Palestine thing. And President Trump, of course, appearing on the Five. Got a couple of other audio bites and video bites from that, as well as the show continues to unfold. And we do have a lot going on in Iran. I've got all the latest straight ahead. It's Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It's 6 a.m. I'm Mason Fleming with your top stories. Full forecasted traffic in 5 minutes. President Trump again is pushing back deadlines as he's set for Iran to lift its threats against the ships moving through the Strait of Hormuz or face American bombing of Iranian power plants. Sorry. ABC's Sophie Flay has the latest.
The president appears hopeful a deal to end the war is possible. He's now extended the deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz by 10 days, threatening to bomb crucial power plants if Iran doesn't comply.
They want to make a deal. The reason they want to make a deal is they have been just beat to
Iran denies any talks have been held, but acknowledges trading messages with the U.S. through Pakistan.
A judge is set to hold a high-stakes hearing on Friday after the FBI's controversial search of Fulton County's election office in January.
Lawyers for the Trump administration will face serious questions for the first time on Friday about the search and seizure of Fulton County's 2020 election records. Fulton County officials have argued the FBI misled a judge to secure a warrant for the records. And now a federal judge is considering a request to force the Trump administration to return the materials. From Atlanta, Georgia, Peter Haralambous, ABC News.
And for the Department of Homeland Security, an early morning vote on Capitol Hill has given the nation's airport security workers hope of getting paid again soon. The Senate has passed a bill to fund most of the Department of Homeland Security, including the Transportation Security Administration. The House is to consider the measure later today.
This is Jim Ryan. The overnight Senate vote has done little to ease the massive lines at airports nationwide. Some of the longest delays are found in Houston.
Traveling from Houston to Baton Rouge.
Standing in line forced Melissa Gates to miss her flight Thursday evening.
I should have just driven. 5 hours would have been hilarious next to this.
Facing weeks without a paycheck, hundreds of TSA officers have quit since the congressional budget impasse began. Jim Ryan, ABC News.
And trouble in the air. A close call at California airport between a passenger jet and a military helicopter now under investigation. ABC's Hannah Batah has the details.
This morning, the FAA investigating a near disaster in Southern California. A National Guard helicopter on a training mission crossing in front of a United Airlines plane attempting to land at John Wayne Airport. The jet was carrying 168 passengers and crew. The chopper came so close, it triggered the plane's anti-collision alert system.
That's the latest news, traffic, and weather up next. I'm Mason Fleming, WTN News.
Okay, downtown, there's a crash with the right shoulder blocked at I-40 eastbound past I-24 at exit 211. South Nashville, there's an accident I-24 westbound before Murfreesboro Pike, exit 52. Midtown, we got an accident in Charlotte Avenue and 12th Avenue North. And then Davidson County, injury accident North 11th Street and Woodland Street. Traffic every 10 minutes every morning on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
.606, welcome on into a Friday. It is March 27th. I'm Dan Mandis. Mason Fleming is in for Joan Jones today. Joan's back on Monday. And, of course, Sam is producing. And, Sam, I'd like to ask Mason if I could. Mason, Was the breaking out in laughter in the middle of your newscast, was that in your actual script, or was that just, you kind of going off script?
No, I pre-planned at least 4 laughs in my newscast as I was heading through the news this morning.
You know what? When the news is all bad, you might as well just have a guffaw or two.
No, I messed up. I messed up bad, and wanted to get ahead of it by laughing at myself and moving on.
Listen, you have to do that. And by the way, I think you sound fine. And Mason talked to me after his newscast. Apparently, you had a bit of a coughing fit right before you were supposed to go on.
Yeah, the legal ID was playing, and I'm back here coughing like my lungs out. Took a sip of water, and brain just hadn't focused as we were getting back on the air, and so
it's all right.
Just flubbed my first 3 sentences getting through there. And I was like, I'm gonna laugh this off, apologize ahead of time, and then move on.
Listen, the great news is you've only got 7 more hours of newscast to go.
Oh, easy, yeah.
All right,
So
very
fun.
good. Well, thank you.
How dare you?
Thank you, Mason. And hey, did you guys see this video? Amazing video. I'm truly curious if the left will come out and give props to the ICE agent saving. Oh, I don't know. The ICE agent saving the 1-year-old from choking at JFK.
Yeah, I saw that.
Did you see this?
This is crazy. Now, it's a skill in my mind
to give a 1-year-old the Heimlich maneuver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess, did he also start CPR?
Yeah.
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 I mean, it just, oh no, we're putting ICE in airports. What's the worst that could happen?
Oh, they have no training.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yet this ICE agent saved a 1-year-old. The family waiting in line at JFK, 1-year-old was unconscious, and I guess the ICE agent stepped in, recognized that the baby was choking or had choked, got the object out, and gave apparently CPR and saved the baby's life. So I love that, and you got to love stories like that. And, kudos to not only that ICE agent, but the ICE agents across the country who have been not only working the airports, but also working the streets all across the country. It is 6:09, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. The war in Iran. Coming up at 6:35, I've got General Dick Newton. He's going to be joining us. There's a number of things that are out there that are worthy of discussion. Number one of the biggest headlines out there, and I do realize that there's a lot of propaganda that is going on. The headline from the Daily Mail, Iran has 1 million fighters ready to go. And yeah, I mean, that checks. They do have I don't know if you'd call it the draft, but they have mandatory service in Iran. Conscription. They have conscription, so you have to serve in the military at one point or another. I think they do that in South Korea too, and obviously other nations as well. So that is feasible. One of the things, though, that I would point out as I was doing my research on this is that some of these folks are weakly or lightly trained fighters, so that's one part of it. But as far as the 1 million fighters go, they have a lot of various military agencies or apparatus there in Iran. It is an alarming headline, I suppose. But again, the reality is that they do have this conscription. They also have reserves. They have the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. Those are the ones that you've got to be aware of, especially if you're our military. Some of these folks also are reservists, barely trained too. So you have that aspect to it. But, the Iranian state media claims that these 1 million troops have been mobilized in preparation for a U.S. ground invasion to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Donald Trump is also saying that he may very well be going after Karg Island. All of this has been going on. President Trump had that big cabinet meeting yesterday, and he talked about how discussions have been going on in the, within obviously the Trump administration. Are they speaking to the right people? We've all been talking about that. Is the president speaking to the right group of people? This is Donald Trump yesterday during that cabinet meeting, some of which, by the way, you heard live here on WTN with Chris Hand. This is the president talking about how the discussions with Iran have been going pretty good.
President, do you have a new deadline, given that there are some talks now? Do you have a new deadline before taking?
No, I'll announce it. Right now, You're talking about a deadline for doing some pretty big damage, even bigger than we've done. We'll see. Look, we have very substantial talks going on with respect to Iran, with the right people. You know, I told you about a present, right? Steve, can I reveal the present?
So, of course, drum roll, please. What is the big gift that the president got? Witkoff says, sir, you can do anything that you want.
They said to show you the fact that we're real and solid and we're there. We're going to let you have 8 boats of oil, 8 boats, 8 big boats of oil. This was 2 days ago. And they'll sail up tomorrow. That was 3 days ago. And I didn't think much about it. And then I watched the news, and they said, a very good anchor, actually, happened to be Fox. But I watched it, and he said, something's unusual happening. There are 8 boats that are going right up the middle of the Hormuz Strait. 8 big tankers are going loaded up with oil right through. And I said, well, I guess they were right, and they were real. And I think they were Pakistani flagged. And
so that is part of what the president had to say. The president has now extended his deadline not to strike Iranian energy plants another 10 days. From Fox News, the Iranian hardliners running Tehran since Donald Trump killed the Ayatollah are now ramping up calls to build a nuclear bomb as the regime claims it has 1 million fighters on standby for a U.S. ground invasion. So here we go again, where you've got the American president talking about how they're having very substantial talks and they allowed 8, and he goes on to say that it actually turned out to be 10 boats that were allowed through the Strait of Hormuz. Yet you have the hardliners who are saying, you know, heck with all this, we're going to start ramping up our calls to build a nuclear bomb. So clearly what's happening is you have different groups within Iran, and basically what they're doing is they're competing against each other for the ears and the eyes of the Iranian people. So President Trump can come to an agreement with, and I'll ask Dick Newton about this, but basically the president, he can come to an agreement with one group or one organization, but that doesn't mean that all of the other groups within Iran can adhere to whatever the agreement was. You remember Joe Kent, Trump's now former head of counterterrorism, before quitting because he didn't believe in the mission in Iran. He's anti-Israel and is accusing Israel of manipulating Donald Trump into going into Iran. He was on Sean Ryan's podcast. I've got some select audio bites from that straight ahead. It is 6:15 on Super Talk 99.7. Mason, or I'm not sure who has the traffic right. Let's go ahead and check the roads on WTN.
Somebody has it.
Somebody's got it. Thank you, Christy. Mostly cloudy today, breezy, a couple of afternoon showers and a thunderstorm. High of 71 on Saturday, high of 61. Very dry air, watch for fire risk. Warming up to 75 with breezes on Sunday. So, yeah, you had Joe Kent. He was on Sean Ryan's podcast, and they went through some of the I want to go through some of the highlights. By the way, this is audio only. Went through some of the highlights, and he's talking about what's going on in Iran. And I'm going to be honest with you, although I'm no fan of Joe Kent, he's actually got some pretty compelling things to say.
We have a drastically different strategic goal than the Israelis do. So we will say that Israel is our ally in this. They're basically our co-equal in this. People like me will say, actually, we're not really even co-equals. They're leading because we're having to react to them. But either way, we're basically joined at the hip with the Israelis. Now, the problem is they have a much different strategic goal and a much, I'd say, higher threshold and tolerance for chaos and bloodshed.
Yeah, well, that is certainly true. I mean, I hate to say it, but Israel is far more used to chaos and bloodshed than America is. And that's because Israel has been basically fighting for its life for years and years and years. And so this is one of those situations where Israel is kind of used to all this. But Israel does have a lot to gain from a neutered Iran. But of course, so do we, and so does the world. I do believe that we are somewhat joined at the hip with Israel. Many years as allies, and that has led us down this road. But, sometimes I feel like people like, Joe Kent, for example, see these things in a bit of a vacuum. Like all of those years of Iran funding terror just never happened. And it's like, all of those years of Iran building those roadside bombs and, ending up killing and mutilating our members of the military in Afghanistan when they built those roadside bombs in Iran. All of that never happened as well. I mean, this is one of those things where I understand where the people are saying, oh, it's Israel, it's Israel, it's Israel. And you know what? I don't buy it. I believe that Donald Trump is his own man. And if this is ultimately if this fight against Iran ends up to be a catastrophic failure, then Donald Trump has to take responsibility. He's not going to put it off on Israel. And if it ends up to be a victory for America, then that is our victory to enjoy. But clearly, we are partners with with Israel in this battle. But, it's like some of these people like Joe Kent, they're making it seem like we've just invaded an innocent country. The people of Iran are innocent, but the leaders of Iran clearly are not. He does say that Israel's main goal is survival.
As critical as I am of our relationship with the Israelis have a very clear strategic goal, and that is to take out this regime lock, stock, and barrel. That's to get rid of the Ayatollahs, the clerical class that rules over, and then also the IRGC, which is a huge lift. It's a big country. Those institutions are massive. They've got a lot of support, but that's the Israelis' goal. The Israelis don't really care necessarily if that happens and Iran then slips into chaos and the Straits of Hormuz remains inflamed and there's a migration crisis, and there's an ongoing war. The Israelis don't care about that. They care that the IRGC and the Ayatollahs can no longer fund their proxies or cause them problems inside of Israel.
Yeah, because Iran funded the attack against Israel. Israel has been battling for their very existence again for as long as they've existed. And so they have no choice but to do what they need to do. I mean, that'd be my 2 cents on what Joe Kent had to say there. And by the way, the dude, at least it seems to me, has a brilliant military mind. There is a reason why Donald Trump chose him to be part of, his administration as part of his and the leader of the counterterrorism team. Here's more from Joe Kent.
So again, you've got us footing the bill, doing the majority of the combat, doing the dying, doing the fighting. We have a very, very murky strategic objective, whereas the Israelis are driving this. They're driving essentially our commitment of combat power. They're driving us having people lose their lives. They have a very clear strategic objective. And this is why I say the number one thing we have to do in order to get out of this is to restrain the Israelis and get our relationship with Israel straight. Otherwise, it's all going to be for naught, and we're going to continue to get sucked in further and further.
So, take this for what it's worth. I've got some more audio bites that I'll share throughout the morning here on a Friday. But, for what it's worth, Sean Ryan is a guy that I respect, and these two seemed simpatico on all things Iran war. They're against ground troops, and they are sounding the alarm on us trying to take over Karg Island. I'll get into that later on in the program and coming up in my interview with General Dick Newton. But Sean Ryan, again, is a guy that I respect. I do respect Kent's military service. But also remember that he is somebody who has been accused and is under investigation of being a serial leaker. And his tune has changed on Iran over time. And his political affiliations have changed as well. His current affiliation is as a Republican. Past affiliations, though, he was a libertarian from 2012 to 2019, and he was a Democrat for a couple of years, 2019 to 2021. So people are allowed to change their mind. I have absolutely no problem with that. But all I'm trying to say to you is that it does seem to me that there have been some inconsistencies with what this guy has said over the years. But I do also believe that this does have to be this this ongoing battle in Iran, this has got to be a conversation where we do hear from all sides, including, by the way, the naysayers, and Joe Kent and Sean Ryan are certainly two. It is 6:22 on Nashville's Morning News. Mason has the news coming up at 6:30. Mason.
More on the TSA funding and bomb threats at an Air Force base. All that and more coming at 6:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Yes, indeed. 622. Dan Mandis here from my friends at Stoltzco. This is a great Tennessee company. They do continue to grow and expand. They do build pole barns, and these pole barns can serve as a garage, an event space, an equestrian building, even barn dominiums. And you can live in these pole barns. Again, they're called barn dominiums. And these days, barn dominiums are new and improved from Stoltzco. They're offering you turnkey options. Now, what is a turnkey option with a barn dominium? That means that they handle the design, the construction, and the amazing finishing touches. You turn the key and you are home, thanks to Stoltzco. Now, your new pole barn from Stoltzco can be used as anything you want it to be, even a man cave if you'd like. So if you've got some land that needs a building for whatever you want, call Stoltzco at 615-622-5992, 615-622-5992. You can also find them on Instagram and Facebook to see examples of their incredible work around Middle Tennessee. STOLTZCO, Stoltzco.com. 628. Nashville's Morning News. All right, Mason and Sam. The super text line, they're a little spicy today. So 5581, I talked about how, I'd be playing some of this audio as the program continues to unfold. 5581 says this. All the other local shows on your station unfold. Your show, Dan, merely unravels and falls apart at the seams. Wowzer. And then, Mason, you and I were talking about how you burst out, sort of laughing as your newscast in the 6 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
Unraveled at the seams itself. And another guy says, and I'm getting so many this morning, but another guy says, it's okay, Mason, don't worry about it. Dan's show really isn't even professional itself, so you fit right in. Okay.
Listen, I'm just trying to match the vibe here.
Oh, boy. Anyway, so.
Hey, it's Friday.
It's Friday.
It is Friday. It is Friday. And Joan will be back on Monday. And as always, Mason, I appreciate not only you filling in, but also showing up in the morning. And that's always a good thing.
I try.
It's kind of funny, though, real quickly. How much do we have? We have like a minute, right?
Yeah.
So I was so disappointed to see Mason this morning.
Yeah.
Wow.
Dan walks back here to the studio with the biggest frown on his face.
I
As
said,
he made eye contact and went, cool, good to see you too this morning, Dan.
I walk in and I said, Jay Harper. And there's Mason. And I become, my face becomes crestfallen because this morning, Jay Harper, true story. And I love Jay. Jay gave me a shirt about a year and a half ago. And I'm wearing it today. It's for his sports network thing. He gave me the shirt a couple of years ago, and it never fit, right? It was like a really tight shirt.
Little tight.
So
he was giving you goals.
Yes. So this morning, I've lost, and I don't want to make a big deal out of it, but I've lost like 35 pounds.
Hey, that's huge.
So over the past probably 6 months. And so I finally was able to fit into the shirt. And so I wore it to show, hey, look, Jay Harper, I'm wearing the shirt. And he's not even here.
Makes sense.
It's not even here.
So
sad day for Dan.
I'm going to go home and eat a cheesecake. Anyway, it is 6:30 on WTN.
It's 6:30. I'm Mason Fleming with your top stories. Full forecast and traffic in 5 minutes. The Senate early this morning passed a bill to fund most of the Department of Homeland Security, including TSA, after a week-long shutdown that caused long delays for travelers at U.S. airports. Funding had been held up over Democrats' demand for immigration enforcement reforms. ABC's Ali Pekarin reports from Washington.
The Senate acted on an agreement that is a little bit of a win for both sides of the aisle, but still leaves some pretty big glaring areas. They passed a bill that would fund TSA, but a few other areas too, including the Coast Guard, FEMA, that's emergency response, and CISA, which is the organization that does cyber infrastructure security. However, it very critically left out one big area, which is funding for ICE, as well as some aspects of Customs and Border Patrol.
Bomb threats at the Air Force. The FBI now says a brother and sister have been charged in connection with an alleged explosive device found near the visitor center at MacDill Air Force Base in Florida last week. Officials say it was planted on March 10th, and soon afterward a 911 call was made about the bomb on the base, but wasn't found until almost a week later. The suspects, Alan Zhang and Anne-Marie Zhang, allegedly fled to China after the bomb was planted, but Anne-Marie Zhang then returned to the United States and was arrested. Investigators are also taking a look at a video sent to the Tampa Bay Times shortly after the bomb was left at the base. ABC News Chief Justice Correspondent.
The person who sent that video in silhouette claimed that this was about anger concerning U.S. policies in Iran, the assault in Iran, and also concern about U.S. deportation policy. We do not know if this video is definitely authentic and tied to the events.
President Trump is again pushing back the deadline he set for Iran to lift its threats against ships moving through the Strait of Hormuz or face American bombing of Iranian power plants. ABC's Sophie Flay has the latest.
The president appears hopeful a deal to end the war is possible. He's now extended the deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz by 10 days. threatening to bomb crucial power plants if Iran doesn't comply.
They want to make a deal. The reason they want to make a deal is they have been just beat to
Iran denies any talks have been held, but acknowledges trading messages with the U.S. through Pakistan.
That's the latest news, traffic, and weather. Up next, I'm Mason Fleming, WTN News.
Thank you, Mason. 633, Nashville's Morning News. The guaranteed offer from Mark Spain Real Estate. It is the easiest way to sell your home. You're going to save time and make the most money. You can say goodbye to the stress that comes with showings, open houses, and costly home repairs. Now, my friends at Mark Spain Real Estate, they are going to help you sell your home fast and, yes, for maximum profit. Now, one of their satisfied clients, Steve, said, my experience with Mark Spain Real Estate was beyond 5 stars. Not only did I get an amazing offer on my home, but we quickly closed as well. I'm so appreciative of Mark Spain Real Estate, says Steve, and he's not alone. You know, Mark Spain Real Estate, they've got over 130,000 5-star reviews. They sell more than 38 homes every single day, making them the most experienced real estate team in America. You can trust Mark Spain Real Estate to provide the strongest cash offer in the industry and sell your home hassle-free. Find out what the guaranteed offer would be on your home today. There's no obligation. 855-299-SOLD or go to markspain.com to get a guaranteed offer on your home today. That's markspain.com and start packing.
Got a crash in Pleasant View off 24 eastbound before Springfield, Ashland City, exit 24, causing some backup. On the downtown split, got a crash with the right lane blocked off 40 eastbound past 24 downtown, exit 211. And over in Midtown, got an injury crash off Charlotte Avenue, 12th Avenue North, 14th Avenue North as well. Traffic every 10 minutes every morning on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
.637, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Good morning to your friends, and happy Friday to you. I want to welcome on into the program General Dick Newton joining us again. And I got to tell you, I really enjoy our conversations, and I'm glad for your insight this morning. I saw a headline that said that Iran has 1 million fighters at the ready, and it looked like, and it was from the Daily Mail, and is a somewhat of a menacing headline as they anticipate Donald Trump sending in ground troops eventually. Can we talk a little bit about the state of Iran's military when it comes to those million fighters that is being reported?
Well, good morning, Dan. Happy Friday to all. It's good to be with you. Iran has really, you think of both not their military force, but their paramilitary force. Let's just go down the line real quick. What's maintaining control of the people, well, 92 million people, and it's been so for decades since the Islamic Revolution back in 1979, is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. This is the hardcore military, well-trained, well-organized, well-financed, and a number of about 200,000. They maintain control inside Iran, and they're also responsible for exporting terrorism, supporting proxy organizations, which really external to Iran, that's the power base, such as Hezbollah to the north of Israel, now creating a little bit of a havoc in southern Lebanon. Hamas, which is nearly defeated but still has weapons inside of Gaza. And then you've got the Houthis to the south in Yemen. You've got some paramilitary organizations at the hands of Iran and Iraq and Syria, but that's the lineup from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Then you've got the Basij Militia, which is a paramilitary organization, as my friend and colleague Dave Petraeus calls them, the pipe swingers. They're the ones that ruthlessly control the streets throughout, not just Tehran, but throughout Iran. Think of Iran about 2.5 times the size of Texas, but they've got quite a reach. About 700,000. They're the ones that were killing, shooting, brutalizing the Iranian citizens in the streets that we saw not in January this year, but they've been doing that for years as well. And then there is the National Police State, another paramilitary organization, and then they have what I would refer to as a conventional army and a navy, and a Marines and an Air Force, and we've pretty much decimated their military capability along those lines. Final point on this is that they are to be reckoned with, but it is part of the Iranian information operations campaign. Think of psychological warfare. To really turn that, where are the two audiences? There's external audiences that you just reported on in terms of their own pronouncements, but it's also for internal domestic use as well to control the Iranian people, to really let the Iranian people know that, hey, we got a grip on this. We have a grip on power. And so that's really and we've heard from the Iranian mullahs and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps for years. Not a surprise, but it is part of their bluster, but certainly part of their military campaign.
I do find it interesting how, and I've been talking about this, and everybody has, where you've got the president saying that, Iran gave me a big gift. It turns out to be 8 to 10 ships being able to cross through the Strait of Hormuz. But then you have other groups within Iran who are basically saying, we're going to annihilate America. So are you confident that President Trump is speaking to the appropriate group? Because, and I know that you and I have talked about this, but for folks that haven't heard our previous discussions, there's a bunch of different groups within Iran, and they don't all agree. And so how do we know that Donald Trump is talking to the right group?
There are many groups. I think the power base right now, as I mentioned, the Ayatollah, I understand, my sources tell me, we've heard in media, Dan, that is somewhat close to being mortally wounded. Don't know who the mullahs around him, the theocracy, the theocratic regimes, for decades have been in power. But I think we go back to the real power base is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. There are two, perhaps, elements inside Iran, if you think of senior leaders. And that is first the Iranian parliament speaker, Ghalibaf, is one. And the second is really their Minister of Foreign Affairs. On lead for the United States is Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. I don't believe at this point, according to media and my sources, again, that they're actually directly speaking with the Iranians. They're going through third parties. Those third parties include the Pakistanis, the Egyptians, perhaps Turkey, being served as a potential avenue of a diplomatic approach in terms of discussions, but I wouldn't call this formal negotiations at this point. On that note, I've talked about this a couple of days or so ago. I salute the administration for pursuing a diplomatic path here. But we should be doing so, and I guarantee the president is, and the administration is, from a position of strength. Although Iran has demonstrated they've got some punch left, their missile inventory is down, but they are still able to launch ballistic missiles to threaten U.S. Men and women in uniform there in the region, but also Israel and the Gulf and Arab nations. They also have quite a drone capability that can be used and has been used. So they haven't let their foot off the gas, but it's the United States, I believe, that holds most of the cards here. What I would advise the president is to stick with our military objectives and to pursue, really the focus is on destroying Iranians' retaliatory capability, their missile and drone capability. Absolutely destroy down to the last yard their intent, as well as their demonstrated pursuit of nuclear weapons development capability. We're going after the Navy now. That's a key aspect of Admiral Brad Cooper, the commander of U.S. Central Command, who is doing an extraordinary job, by the way, now focusing on the Strait of Hormuz, and then also going still after their proxy networks. Those organizations, their ability to sustain and organize, train, and equip those proxies, which is really the main focus of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. I'm talking Hezbollah, Hamas, and Houthis and so forth. But now the attention's turned towards the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf writ large. Iran has used leverage there. Not so much. They have capability with shoreline, short-range anti-ship ballistic missiles, drones, and also about 5,000 mines, which they can use. But the Persian Gulf is also really the source of their economic power. If you think of Karg Island, up to the north, about 300 miles to the north of the Strait of Hormuz, that's where 60% of the revenue comes from. That's where the transshipment of Iranian oil, 90% of it starts at the Karg Island and goes through the strait. That's their economic lifeline and pipeline. And then it's also about 50% of their budget that they put in towards the Persian Gulf area and starting at Karg Island and so forth. So now we're going to see us endeavor, as we keep focused on those other military objectives I mentioned from the United States side. By the way, Israel is also pursuing their objectives. They're separate and apart, but synced up, and they're going after the Islamic Guard Corps, the Islamic regime itself, the infrastructure that supports the regime, leadership, command and control, and other infrastructure aspects to take down the regime, or at least give the regime finish off the regime so it implodes, so the Iranian people can reclaim their country. So that's all happening at the same time. My point here is, Dan, is we ought to continue to finish the job. Sure, pursue a diplomatic path, but I'm highly skeptical of that. I haven't obviously spoken with the president about this, but I think he would be skeptical of it also, but pursue it nonetheless.
It is 6:45, Nashville's Morning News, and with us, General Dick Newton, talking about the various options in Iran. Coming up, General, just on CNN, and as you and I were speaking, they have this headline, which I'm going to ask you about. The headline is, many of Trump's options in Iran risk heavy casualties, according to sources. They're calling this breaking news, so I'm going to ask you about that. Also, I'm going to ask you about Karg Island. There's a lot of debate over whether or not we should put ground troops in Karg Island. Some are saying that our troops, our men and women, would be, basically sitting ducks on Karg Island. And there's also the question as far as how to get our military ships through the Strait of Hormuz. More with General Dick Newton coming up. It's 6:46. Time to check the roads on WTN. Mostly clouded today, breezy, a couple of afternoon showers, a thunderstorm, high of 71. Saturday, high of 61 with dry air, possible fire risk, and warming up to 75, and breezes on Sunday. Thanks for listening to Nashville's Morning News. General Dick Newton. So let me just ask you about that headline from CNN. They're calling this breaking news, where they say that most of the options that Donald Trump has would involve heavy casualties.
I think what they're referring to, and I haven't seen the CNN report, but what they're referring to is, should the president decide and authorize Admiral Cooper to engage or employ U.S. troops. Those troops could be from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit coming on scene from the USS Tripoli from Japan. That's about 2,500 Marines with a number of F-35 strike fighters and so forth. They arrive in the Central Command region near the Persian Gulf in the North Arabian Sea sometime today, actually, in a couple hours. And then you also have the USS Boxer, same contingent of the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit steaming from San Diego towards the Persian Gulf, should arrive there in about 10 days or so. And so that's about 5,000 Marines. He's also authorized the 82nd Airborne, the combat brigade, one of their combat brigade teams, which is, think of them as knock the door down. Paratroopers, highly elite. In fact, our son was with the 82nd Airborne, had served back-to-back tours in Iraq and Afghanistan and so forth. So it's a very high-end capable United States military capability there. What CNN may be referring to, I'm not going to validate it, but there are risks in terms of using ground forces from a sustained standpoint. But I don't think that's in the cards for the United States. But what he's authorized, as I mentioned, to our combatant commander, Admiral Cooper, are options. And should we decide to need ground forces, such as, let's just, as an example, maybe take Carg Island, which is about, several miles offshore, but it's not a large island per se, but that's where all the transshipment infrastructure, really the crown jewel of Iran's transshipment capability of getting about 90% of their oil inventory out of the Persian Gulf starts at Carg Island. It's transshipped there and so forth. We've already taken down the military defenses that they have. We've taken down their coastal naval capability on Carg Island itself. It's not going to be easy, but we would do it with not necessarily fighting our way through the Strait of Hormuz with shipping, because we're not ready to do that yet because of the threat of Iranian mines and those drones and so forth. But we'll get to the Strait, and we will secure the Strait at some point. But should we decide to take Carg Island, and that is an option Admiral Cooper has, then I guarantee we'll do that. But I also guarantee you that Admiral Cooper is just as focused on offensive capabilities as he is defensive capabilities to limit the risk of harm and threats to our men and women in uniform, so forth, moving forward. He's done a remarkable job so far. And let's talk about that. I mean, this has been a conditions-based military campaign that has been quite remarkable, both on the U.S. side as the Israeli side. And so, but we still have work to do. We're going deep into the their threats with regard to their ballistic missiles, as well as their drone, but also their manufacturing capability. We're going very deep into the playbook of taking out their military leadership and their political leadership. That's been mainly on the shoulders of Israel, which has done a magnificent job as a partner in this campaign. Just a day or two ago, we took out the Iranian naval commander, who not only plans and organizes, but oversees from an Iranian naval capability in the Straits and in the Persian Gulf. And so what I would underscore, if I was on CNN right now, but speaking with you, is not necessarily make this based on a timeline per se, but make it based on conditions. And in some cases, through all conflicts, the enemy, the adversary gets a vote here. But what is the United States military highly capable of doing? Adapting. And that's what we're doing right now. That's what you're seeing play out. It is still a very unsafe environment inside the Strait and around the Strait, but also the Persian Gulf. But we're getting to that, and we will. We will take back the Strait. We have the capability to do it. And then afterwards, once that is accomplished, and once that, frankly, the Iranian regime is somewhat decimated, what's next, I believe what you're going to see inside the Persian Gulf and inside and outside the Persian Gulf at strategic choke points, is you're going to need to see the United States and an allied force of naval ships to patrol, but also to provide convoy support, to raise the confidence of global shipping that they can go back and forth through the Strait at will. That's going to take not weeks or months. That may take years, frankly, Dan. And we saw that with regard to what we did after we took down Saddam Hussein when he invaded Kuwait back in 91. What did we do from 92 to 2003? We maintained air superiority over southern and south central Iraq with Operation Southern Watch. We had allies along the way, though. We had the Saudis, we had French the United States and so forth. I mean, that's a long answer to a short question, but that's what we're trying. That's what's unfolding here.
Yeah.
We could talk for a couple hours about this, but that's, I think, what you're going to see in the near term.
You know what? And maybe at some point, we'll do a nice long podcast on all of this, because you're right. I always feel, with our chats, General Dick Newton, I always feel a little bit like I've cheated the audience, because there's so much to talk about and I only have so much time. But thank you very much for joining us here on Nashville's Morning News, and hope to speak to you again soon. That is General Dick Newton. I mean, so many different angles to talk about what is going on with Iran. We didn't even get to oil prices or, some of the other things that I wanted to talk about. But we do have a couple more hours to go here on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7. And Mason has the news coming up at 7. Mason.
Trump pushes back in high stakes in an FBI investigation. All that and more at 7 a.m. on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
All right, thank you, Mason. It is 6:53 on Super Talk 99. Super Talk 99.7 is what the radio station is.
I have it on my quarter zip in case you forget.
Thank you very much there, Sam. Listen, Dan Mandis here. One thing I have not forgotten is about my friends at Contours and how they want to help you get your beach bod back. Now, summer is just months away, but the work to get that bod back remains beginning right now. My friends at Contours, they can help you get it back with FDA-cleared red light technology. Now, Contours, they're going to help you target those areas that you hate, whether it is your belly, your arms, or your legs, whatever problem area you may have. They can solve that problem. No pain, no surgery, and no downtime. We are talking about results again. It is with FDA-cleared red light technology. Now, real men and women from Franklin and across Middle Tennessee have been checking out Contours. Yes, indeed, they have been seeing real results. Red light therapy, it really is all the rage, and especially here in the last couple of years. Companies like Contours, they've been discovering this and refining this and perfecting this process using red light technology to really, contour or sculpt those problem areas on your body. They also, by the way, can help you with the fine lines on your face as well. With facials, they also do that at Contours as well. And call them, tell them Dan told you to reach out, 615-236-9960, 615-236-9960, ContoursLLC.com. 6:59, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Nick Shirley had a really, really good speech at CPAC. I'm trying to get some of the audio from that. But Donald Trump, by the way, not at CPAC. I thought that was interesting. But he did have something to say, Donald Trump did, about Tim Walz and Keith Ellison. And let me tell you something, the president, as he does, he did not mince words. I've got that audio for you. Also, the House is going to be busy in the next couple of days because they have a funding bill to get to. We'll talk about what the Senate did last night. All of that and a whole lot more straight ahead. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It's 7 a.m. I'm Mason Fleming with your top stories. Full forecasted traffic in 5 minutes. President Trump is again pushing back the deadline he set for Iran to lift its threats against the ships moving through the Strait of Hormuz or face American bombing of Iranian power plants. ABC's Sophie Flay has the latest.
The president appears hopeful a deal to end the war is possible. He's now extended the deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz by 10 days, threatening to bomb crucial power plants if Iran doesn't comply.
They want to make a deal. The reason they want to make a deal is they have been just beat to
Iran denies any talks have been held, but acknowledges trading messages with the U.S. through Pakistan.
A judge is set to hold a high-stakes hearing on Friday about the FBI's controversial search of Fulton County's election office in January.
Lawyers for the Trump administration will face serious questions for the first time on Friday about the search and seizure of Fulton County's 2020 election records. Fulton County officials have argued the FBI misled a judge to secure a warrant for the records, and now a federal judge is considering a request to force the Trump administration to return the materials. From Atlanta, Georgia, Peter Haralambous, ABC News.
There are still long lines at airports early this morning with travelers trying to get through security despite sickouts among TSA workers in the midst of DHS shutdown that forced many of them to go weeks without pay. Leah Redfern was flying out of New York's LaGuardia Airport early this morning.
Well, I honestly was surprised because I thought that no one would be here at 3 a.m., but then I've seen it on social media how bad it was, and I thought that was kind of being blown out of proportion, but now that I've seen it, it's pretty bad.
And 42 days after a partial government shutdown began, the fight over funding for the Department of Homeland Security might finally be winding down. ABC's Jim Ryan says the Senate voted before dawn today.
On a voice vote, the Senate agreed to fund the Transportation Security Administration, but not ICE or Customs and Border Protection. Back in the Senate, the finger-pointing continues. Senate Majority Leader John Thune.
It is now clear to everyone, Democrats didn't actually want a solution.
Minority Leader Chuck Schumer.
This could have been accomplished weeks ago if Republicans hadn't stood in the way.
With Senate approval in hand, the House will now take up the measure to fund TSA and get airport security personnel paid again. Jim Ryan, ABC News.
That's the latest news, traffic, and weather up next. I'm Mason Fleming, WTN News. Still dealing with that crash over in Pleasant View with stop-and-go traffic off 24 eastbound before Springfield, Ashland City, exit 24. Got an injury crash over in Davidson County off Clarksville Pike at Ashland City Highway. And in Whites Creek, got an accident off 24 eastbound before Old Hickory Boulevard North, exit 40. I'm Mason Fleming. Traffic every 10 minutes every morning on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
.706 Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Good morning to you, friends, and welcome on into a Friday. It is March 27th. So glad that you are along for the ride. Mason Fleming doing the news. Joan is back on Monday. Sam, of course, is here producing. And big news, of course, overnight, if you're just joining us, the Senate finally passed a bill to fund TSA. Now it has to go back to the House of Representatives. I'm trying feverishly to get a congressperson on, whether it is Tim Burchett or Scott Desjardins or Matt Van Epps, but so far not having any luck.
I think you might be a little hard pressed considering they probably didn't go to bed till 3 or 4 in the morning.
Well, that was on the Senate side. The House side, they probably went to bed perhaps at their normal time. I have no idea, but I'm trying to get somebody on to get their thoughts on it. But I would assume that they're not real happy. I know that Mike Johnson probably not happy with having this dumped onto his lap. But the Senate was getting ready to go on for a 2-week recess. And so, you know, part of the dynamic here, and I did explain this in the 5 o'clock hour, but just briefly, part of the dynamic here, and the good news is TSA is going to get paid. That's the point. The point is TSA is going to get paid, and the lines are going to be much shorter. It does have to pass the House. It goes from the Senate back over to the House for the House to pass it. But, you know, bottom line is Donald Trump had come out and he had said that he was going to utilize an emergency order to move some funds to get TSA paid. So you'll notice, and this is what I noticed right off the bat when this whole thing came down, was, oh, look, Donald Trump is out there saying that he is going to utilize this executive action to move funds to make sure that the TSA agents don't miss another paycheck, and which means that hopefully more would come to work, fewer would quit, and the lines would become shorter. And the bottom line is Donald Trump would be the hero. And so I think what the Democrats realized was it was perhaps, maybe, an oh crap moment where they were like, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to work with the Republicans and we're going to pass this. And they did not, by the way, get the reforms. The Democrats didn't get the reforms that they wanted. Now, the package approved overnight included money for TSA. This is from Fox News. Ensuring officers receive pay after more than a month without full paychecks. Also, you've got funding for FEMA, the U.S. Coast Guard, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and, of course, customs officers at points of entry. Now, what wasn't funded, of course, was ICE and the Border Patrol. But that's okay because they've got $75-80 billion from the big, beautiful bill. So to me, it seems like, and both sides are claiming victory here, and both sides are also saying that the other side lost in this. You know, for me, whatever. You know who ultimately, at least for the short term, wins is the American people, because at least now, what are we going to have? We're going to have TSA agents that are going to be funded, and we'll have hopefully smoother sailing through the airports once this whole thing becomes official, if the House ultimately ends up passing it. Fox News is reporting this. I thought this was interesting. Fox News reported this as the Republicans ceding ground to Chuck Schumer. And I don't really see it that way. Because they didn't get, what did the Democrats, what were they mostly passionate about? The Democrats were mostly passionate about really defanging ICE. That's what they wanted to do. And the Republicans said, no, we're not going to do that. And the Republicans held firm on that, and I think that's a good thing. Schumer, again, as I said, both sides are going to claim victory here, and that's fine. That's what politics is all about. They say that ICE and parts of the Border Patrol were not funded, but again, they're funded through the big, beautiful bill, that executive order that Donald Trump was getting ready to utilize to fund TSA. The Democrats didn't want him to be the hero in that instance. The president had come out and he had said that, he was going to make sure the TSA was funded one way or another. And so the Democrats, at least to me, the Democrats at that point ultimately then decided to say uncle. Eric Swalwell, I've got some video here if I could. Eric Swalwell was on CNN. I think part of what the Democrats were facing was the fact that they were losing the media narrative. And I think that was something that they were also beginning to deal with. This was Eric Swalwell. And this was on CNN, Casey or Cassie Hunt, not sure which it is, but she asked him a very pointed question, and he clearly, at least to me, struggled with the answer.
But isn't ICE funded? It was funded in the big, beautiful bill.
So why don't we just fund TSA?
Well, I mean, in the reality is that in the offer that Senate Republicans brought to you a few days ago, there was a plan to put funding for enforcement at the border, plus, of course, Republicans want the SAVE Act in a reconciliation package, and fund the rest of it.
That's right.
And yet Democrats said no.
Yeah, and Eric Swalwell, again, he had no answer to that. And I think over the last couple of weeks, the Democrats have seen that even their typical allies, they're not on board with keeping the TSA unfunded. And so now it's got to go over to the House of Representatives. We'll see what the House does. I just got a text message. Let me see if that is one of our Republican. Let's see. Let's do. It's Scott Dejar. Let's see here. Can 7:35? Can we do? Do we have tap dancing music in there? Can we do? I'm asking Congressman Scott Dejar to do 7:35. Our time, which is in about 30 minutes or so. Okay. So, yeah. All right. So I got Congressman Scott Dejar coming up, which means I'm going to have to cancel something else that I had coming up. But Congressman Scott Dejar will join us at 7:35, and I'll get his opinion on the whole thing with TSA. And, basically the bottom line is one of the questions that I'm going to ask him is, because most people are saying that the Republicans are going to have to just pass this thing as is if they want to get it, get the TSA funded very quickly. So that is a part of the conversation this morning. I love what Donald Trump did because it does seem like one way or another, it does seem like he forced the hand of the Democrats. And, the president has been calling on the Republicans in the Senate to eliminate the filibuster to get some of these things done. And I, for one, I like the fact that at least right now, we are going to be able to get the TSA and some of these other agencies funded. ICE and the Border Patrol, they are funded for the long term. I'm not really worried about that. The Republicans are working on that as we speak to figure out how they can get, I heard, I forget who it was, but somebody talking about how the Republicans are working on getting ICE and the Border Patrol funded for the next 10 years, because we know that if the Border Patrol and CBP, they are going to be in peril if the Democrats end up getting the Senate and the House of Representatives in the midterm elections, or maybe just in elections moving forward, because the Democrats are not going to stop until they can absolutely, to use Donald Trump's words, obliterate ICE and perhaps the Border Patrol. Clearly, the Democrats, they have made their plans known. They want to eliminate ICE altogether if they possibly can. That is why the Republicans are going to do whatever they can do to try and get funding for the next many years. We'll see how that whole thing plays out. Scott Dejar will join us at 7:35 here on Nashville's Morning News. And right now, it's time to check the roads on WTN. As far as your weather goes, mostly cloudy, breezy, a couple of afternoon showers and a thunderstorm. High of 71. Saturday, a high of 61. Dry air, possible fire risk, warming up to 75 with breezes on Sunday. And appreciate you listening to Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I think just a little bit of side note here, Sam. I think I figured out what I need to do to be able to share video once again. And it is, hold on. Let me see if I can do this. If not, I'm just going to move on. I've got a million windows opened up, and I don't quite know how to be able to share. There we go. Are we good? We should be good. Am I sharing the proper screen?
Where you want me to show?
Yeah, just show that screen because I do have just show that screen because I do have some video though that I want to play. Donald Trump. Let me play this first. Nick Shirley, of course, we all know Nick, and he had a speech at CPAC. CPAC is going on. Donald Trump not there. Nick Shirley was though, and he had a lot to say. Don't show this because this is audio files only. This is audio only. This is Nick Shirley talking about in my opinion, the importance of his work in discovering all that fraud.
And I'm not here to speak on behalf of Republicans nor Democrats. I'm here to speak on behalf of we the people. I think nowadays we can all agree that we all just want to live the American dream and have the best life possible. However, it feels that sometimes, actually a lot of times, non-controversial issues are becoming controversial inside of America. For instance, if you take a look at the idea of deporting illegal migrants, that word is illegal. That should not be controversial. Or the idea that showing your ID to vote has become controversial. That's not controversial either. The idea that fraud is bad has become controversial. How is that controversial? I know a little bit about fraud. I know a little bit about Minnesota daycares as well. And it's crazy to think that we live in a world where somebody who exposes fraud can then be painted as the bad man from the politicians where he exposed the fraud. Shouldn't they be excited to know that the fraud is being exposed because that's not a Republican dollar or a Democrat dollar, it's actually our dollars.
I mean, I love what Nick Shirley has to say there, and I got to tell you that I think that this is one of the more important stories that, I mean, is sort of fading from view since the war began and so forth. But, you know, I got to tell you that there is not one story really that personifies the ills of Democrat rule more than what we're seeing in Minnesota and also in California. And so I think that is why Donald Trump, of course, he now has J.D. Vance as his fraud czar. And I love that, you know, he is calling out the Democrats. And President Trump did call out the Democrats during that big cabinet meeting yesterday. This is Trump with some unfiltered words about Tim Walz and Keith Ellison.
These crooks in Minnesota, these crooked politicians and dirty cops. They're dirty cops, they're dirty politicians. Walz is a dirty, crooked politician.
I love that. I mean, he is just laying bare Tim Walz is a dirty, crooked politician.
And the Attorney General is a crooked guy. He's no investigations, and I hope JD's going to do a great job. He's in charge of it now with somebody who's very talented. But I think it's easy stuff. They say $19 billion, think of it, is missing. $19 billion. You know, if we would solve half of the fraud problem, Pam, in this country, we would have more than a balanced budget. We'd have a surplus. And in the case of Minnesota, it's very Somalia-oriented. Think of it. These people come from a crooked country, disgusting country, one of the worst countries in the world. Acknowledged to be one of the worst countries in the world. Some people say it's the worst. They have no money, they have nothing. They come to our country, low IQs, and they rob us blind. Stupid people. And they rob us blind because we have crooked politicians and we have dirty cops. The Attorney General's a dirty cop. It's my opinion. It's only my opinion. And something should be done about him. Let's see what kind of a job he can do.
Well, that's the question. Will there be anything done about the crooked cops or the dirty politicians, which, I mean, we're seeing. Whether it's, I mean, he's talking about Keith Ellison, the Attorney General for Minnesota, crooked cop and so forth. And so you've got Tim Walz, you've got Gavin Newsom. And I love what Nick Shirley said. Why is it that it is considered controversial in this country to deport criminal illegal aliens? That's number one. Number two, especially in a time where we are seeing, I mean, if you missed this part of the show earlier, you know, we've had another death. I think an 82 or an 83-year-old man in New York in the subway was pushed in front of a train by a illegal alien, by a criminal illegal alien, a guy that had been deported 4 times, and he keeps coming back in. And so the frustrating part is here in a week where we have said this guy was an 82, 83-year-old veteran. I mean, this dude had survived wars, but he's not able to survive the influx of criminal illegal aliens courtesy of the Biden administration. So during a week where we have had not one, but 2 innocent Americans, great Americans, who have been murdered by illegal aliens, Donald Trump and Nick Shirley both calling out the left as, why is this controversial? The things that the Democrats, their hair is on fire and their heads are spinning round and round. And what are they screaming about? What are they trying to protect? They're trying to protect fraud. They're trying to protect criminal illegal aliens as well. It is mind-boggling, but this is what they do. It is 7:22 on Nashville's Morning News. Congressman Scott Dejar is going to be joining us at 7:35, going to be talking about the funding bill that passed the Senate late last night, early this morning. It is now making its way over to the House. He is getting some intel as we speak, and he'll be able to share it with you coming up at 7:35. Right now, 7:23. Mason has the news coming up at 7:30. Mason, what do we got coming up?
More on the TSA funding and an update on the Strait of Hormuz. All that coming up and more at 7:30 a.m. on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
WTN. Thank you. You know what, Mason? In fairness, I shank the call letters all the time.
Yeah, it's what time is it anymore? Like, who knows at this point?
Chicago has a song about that. You know what? You know what you need? Actually, Mason, somebody said on the super text line, you know what you need?
What do I need?
You need some Wally's Bean Machine coffee.
I think I'm going to go get a cup after this.
That's it. You know what? Not 1, but 2 shots of espresso.
Maybe even 3.
Wally'sBeanMachine.com. All right, 724, Brentwood Jewelry. It is March. Lots of weddings are being planned right now, and I can tell you the best place for engagement rings and wedding rings, my friends at Brentwood Jewelry. You've got to check out their vast selection of wedding bands, semi-mount engagement rings, and loose diamonds as well. They've got rings for every budget and style for both men and women. Now, Brentwood Jewelry is the official jewelry store of the Mandis House. I bought Amy not 1, but 2 amazing pair of earrings, and she bought me my favorite watch. But you know what else they have? Well, if you're looking for a unique gift for the guy in your life, or guys, if you have a wife or a girlfriend or whatever that likes pocket knives, they've got some of the best. The William Henry Knife Collection at Brentwood Jewelry. This is a gift that truly does stand out. Now, I'm not necessarily a pocket knife kind of guy, but these are really, really cool. Go to their website, BrentwoodJewelry.com. Now, these William Henry pocket knives, this collection, handcrafted with aerospace-grade materials, rare hardwoods, and stunning inlays as well. Some say it is more than just a knife. It is a functional work of art. Check them out. 7012 Church Street East, located in the heart of Brentwood, just off Franklin Road. You can also find them online, BrentwoodJewelry.com. That's BrentwoodJewelry.com. 726 on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7. I want to tell you about my friends at Ridgeside Canine Nashville. If you've got a dog that has some behavior issues, and I've been there, done that many times, as a matter of fact, I can relate, and so can my friends at Ridgeside Canine Nashville. So they are in Middle Tennessee. They are some of the absolute premier dog trainers in Middle Tennessee. So if you've got a dog that has aggression problems, potty problems, anxiety issues, maybe just, the most basic of obedience issues, they can help you, help your precious pup with just about anything. My buddy Jeff and his crew at Ridgeside Canine Nashville, I do call them the Dog Whisperers. They've helped thousands of dogs and their owners over the last 25 years solve some of those hard-to-solve behavioral issues. They can help you as well. Now, one of the things that they like to focus on is that owner education is just as important as dog training. Long-term success with your dog really does begin with you and my friends at Ridgeside Canine Nashville. They've got a lifetime support guarantee. They are there for you 24/7. So check them out. Their website, Ridgeside Canine Nashville, their website is rsk9nash.com. The letter K, the number 9, rsk9nash.com. Veteran-owned, proven results, and guaranteed for life. 615-878-0380. 615-878-0380. Online, rsk9nash.com.
It's 7:30 a.m. I'm Mason Fleming with your top stories. Full forecasted traffic in 5 minutes. The Senate early this morning reached a deal that could end the shutdown at the Department of Homeland Security that is now dragged on for more than 40 days. Details from ABC News senior political correspondent Rachel Scott.
The bill's amended is passed.
In the dead of the night, the Senate passing a bill to end this partial government shutdown as long lines stretch at airports across the country. Lawmakers reaching a deal to fund most of the Department of Homeland Security, but exclude money for ICE and parts of Border Patrol.
The measure does not include any of the reforms to ICE demanded by Democrats. It still needs to be approved by the House and President Trump. President Trump is again pushing back at the deadline he set for Iran to lift its threats against ships moving through the Strait of Hormuz and face American bombing of Iranian power plants. ABC's Sophie Flay with the latest.
The president appears hopeful a deal to end the war is possible. He's now extended the deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz by 10 days, threatening to bomb crucial power plants if Iran doesn't comply.
They want to make a deal. The reason they want to make a deal is they have been just beat to
Iran denies any talks have been held, but acknowledges trading messages with the U.S. through Pakistan.
The FBI now confirms two siblings are facing charges tied to an explosive device discovered at MacDill Air Force Base. Officials say the device was planted on March 10th, and although someone called 911 about the bomb, it wasn't found until almost a week later. Investigators say the suspect, Alan and Anne-Marie Zhang, fled to China after the incident. ABC's Pierre Thomas says Anne-Marie Zhang later returned to the U.S. and was arrested.
The person who sent that video in silhouette claimed that this was about anger concerning U.S. policies in Iran, the assault in Iran, and also concern about U.S. deportation policy. We do not know if this video is definitely authentic and tied to the events.
Tennessee's Attorney General is warning CVS to stop using phone numbers collected from pharmacy alerts to send customers messages about pending legislation. The warning comes after CVS texted Tennesseans about a bill the company says could force more than 100 pharmacy and clinic locations to close. Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti says using health-related contact information for political messaging may violate state law, and he's prepared to take action if it continues. The bill at the center of the dispute is still moving through legislature. That's the latest news, traffic, and weather. Up next, I'm Mason Fleming, WTN News. Still keeping an eye on that accident over in Whites Creek with the right shoulder blocked off 24 eastbound before Old Hickory Boulevard North, exit 40. Here in South Nashville, got a crash off Fessler's Lane at Elm Hill Pike. In Laverne, got the HOV lane blocked from a crash off 24 westbound past Old Hickory Boulevard South, exit 62. And in Millersville, got an injury crash off Springfield Highway at Williamson Road. And finally got a crash off Rundell Avenue at Orr Avenue, causing a lot of backup. I'm Mason Fleming. That's traffic every 10 minutes every morning on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
(7:37) Super Talk 99.7 WTN, and welcome on into a Friday. It is March 27th. I'm Dan. Mason's doing the news. Joan is back on Monday. Sam is producing, and Congressman Scott Dejar joining us on the Newsmaker Hotline. Congressman, I know this was like very much last minute. Thank you for joining us. Were you surprised that the Senate finally decided to pass that funding bill? Now it goes over to the House?
Well, I'll put it this way. I wake up every day and look at the news expecting some kind of surprise, but that was one I was not, because in all honesty, we have passed a bill out of the House, including yesterday, 4 times to fund the Department of Homeland Security, which happens to include Border Patrol and ICE. And the Democrats have been using Minnesota as their pawn. It's their new January 6th. It's their new George Floyd, to defund ICE and defund Border Patrol and go back to the ways of Joe Biden with open borders, so they can continue to get their votes or their redistricting or whatever it is they're trying to do. So I'm highly disappointed that the Senate in the middle of the night decides to cave to their demands, basically gave them everything they've been asking for, despite us sending full funding for DHS 4 times.
So one of the things that I would ask, because there's a lot of parlor games, going on. And so one of the things that I would ask is, okay, so now the Senate has passed it. The Democrats did not get those reforms that they were looking for with ICE, and basically, as you and I would agree on, the Democrats wanted to essentially eventually they want to defund ICE, and they also are trying to make ICE less impactful with all of their reforms, the Border Patrol as well. So the Democrats didn't get that, and so and ICE and the Border Patrol, they are funded. They got $75 billion already funded. So you got both sides pointing to each other. We won, they lost. And so, do you believe that the Republicans caved to the Democrats on this?
Well, I think they did. There was reforms that I don't think we had a problem with. Whether ICE agents wore body cameras, I don't even know if ICE agents had a problem with that. If I was one, I'd probably want to have a body camera. The optics of how things went down in Minnesota didn't look good. Trump made changes. He got rid of Kristi Noem, brought in Markwayne Mullins. I think the reason that the agents wear masks is because they're targeted by the worst of the worst, and that's who we should be going after. And so, I think Trump has made some reforms, but I think that what they're asking for is beyond what is reasonable. We've always had a Border Patrol. We've always had ICE, and the president was elected to close the border, which he did, and he was elected to get the bad guys out. And, they're wanting warrants to do that. Do you think, if you think, okay, I've isolated some of the, murderous illegals that are here, but we have to wait for the judge to sign off on an order. In some states that may be easy, but in some states it'd probably be impossible. And they're going to be long gone before ICE could do a raid. So I do kind of feel like it was a cave on the part of the Republicans in the Senate, and apparently, they're leaving town now. And I think the THS agents absolutely need to be funded. I've voted to fund them. I don't think the American people who are traveling should be subjected to long lines because of this stunt that they're trying to pull in the Senate. And so, Trump said that he would just fund ICE or fund THS on his own, and I guess he would pull money out of the big, beautiful bill to do that. I hope that's the plan that we go with today, that we don't bring this bill to the floor. But I was telling you earlier, I was hoping that by the time I got on the phone, I'd see some word from the House on what the plan was. I don't see one yet, which means they probably haven't figured it out. I don't know where the president stands on this, whether he would sign it into law. There's also an issue of whether we can bring it up under suspension. We have a rule that kind of prevents that, so you don't have sneaky little things like this happening that we don't have time to study and read through. So, I mean, in theory, it should go to Rules Committee, and we should vote on it Sunday or Monday. So I don't know what's going to happen yet. My guess is if they bring it to the floor, they're going to try to waive a rule and bring it up under suspension. I think I would have a hard time voting for it unless they've got some grand plan that they can present to me that we're going to be able to fund ICE through a different mechanism, whether it's reconciliation, which is going to be tricky, because that'll be another case where we have to get all Republicans on board and we won't get any help from Democrats. So, it's unfolding. I wish I had more information. I was hoping that in the 20 minutes or so that since you reached out that I would see what the House is planning on doing, but I'm not hearing whispers or anything else. I talked to a few members that said they'd vote for it under suspension. I think I'd have a hard time doing it considering we've already sent them, like I said, 4 full funding bills for DHS that includes Coast Guard, Homeland Security, FEMA, and Border Patrol and ICE, and that's the way it's supposed to be done. So I don't know how long we're going to continue this game.
So I do find all of this really interesting. There's a procedural battle that's going on. There's a narrative battle that's going on as well. If you folks don't fund it, and this is a procedural question because I don't know. So if the House doesn't decide to pass the Senate version of the bill, then Donald Trump does have the backup where he can divert money from one agency to another. He's told DHS to do that, and Markwayne Mullin. Is that the kind of thing where, okay, well then the president is doing that now, and this is what he wants to do to make sure that everybody gets paid? Is that the kind of thing where the Democrats could hold that up if they so chose?
There would be an executive order, and I procedurally, he's done it before on different things, and so I would think that would be something that he could do. It still leaves other agencies hung out to dry, but it would give us time to continue to work on this. So, I mean, to me, and again, unless they have some magic solution that they're going to present to us this morning, I would prefer that the president divert money, pay the TSA agents, and then let's continue to negotiate, because we're not going to defund ICE. We're not going to reopen the borders, and but there are concessions that can be made in the way the ICE operates, like I said, body cameras and other things that we can talk about. But with the Democrats in the Senate, it's all or nothing. We're not going to fund ICE. We're not going to fund Border Patrol without major reforms. I don't know that that's necessarily their call. They weren't the ones elected this last cycle to clean this mess up. And every day, or not every day, but every other day, we wake up hearing about some illegal who's killed somebody, committed some serious crime, and that really was a big reason that the president was elected.
7:45 on Super Talk. Congressman Scott Dejar. Hold on one sec. Got a couple of more questions for you right now, though. Time to check the roads. As far as your weather goes, a mostly cloudy, breezy, couple of afternoon showers and a thunderstorm, high of 71. Saturday, a high of 61, very dry air, and 75 with some breezes on Sunday. Appreciate you listening to Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Congressman Scott Dejar in a last-minute phone call here on WTN. All right, so knowing House Speaker Mike Johnson as you do, what do you think that his response is going to be to the very last minute passing of this funding bill in the Senate early this morning, 2-3 o'clock in the morning? Can he just, and again, procedural question, can he just say, you know what, we're not going to take this up? And were you folks set to go on a recess as well in the House?
It is the Easter work period. I know y'all love to call it recess. But, we are scheduled to be out of session for the next 2 weeks. And so the Senate allegedly, voted and left town. I don't know where they found flights in the middle of the night, but I'm sure they're all hopping planes this morning. And that's the old jam technique. It's like, here, take this or leave it. And we're leaving town, and now you got the hot potato. And so I would say Speaker Johnson is not pleased. I'm guessing, they tend to have Plan B and Plan Z, and I'm sure he's probably talking with the president now. Majority Leader Scalise ultimately decides what comes to the floor. They could do a whip where they whip up the Republicans to see how we would vote. I'm sure every Democrat will vote for this, and so if it were to pass under suspension, it would be with 214 Democrats, and they'd have to scrounge up 80 or so Republicans to support it. But like I said, the colleagues I've talked to this morning so far is kind of a mixed bag. A couple seem willing to vote for it. A couple are saying no way. And like I said, I'm kind of in that camp at the moment without an explanation of a better solution on the horizon that is believable and something that I feel like we could trust and successfully pass. And if it's another reconciliation bill, I'm skeptical because we have a few people in our party right now that won't vote for anything, and we pretty much would have to have everybody. And so it's going to have to be something that would be really believable and feasible to get me to vote for this. But I definitely I want to know that Trump's able to fund TSA through executive order, and if he can do that, then my preference would be they don't bring this bill to the floor and they let the Senate fight it out some more.
Yeah, so if that happens, then the Senate's not going to be back for 2 weeks. And I think, and I mentioned this earlier in the program, if things get a little hinky in the House of Representatives, I think that Trump is going to have to, and I hope that he will be able to get TSA and those other agencies funded through just simply moving some money around. So a lot to watch in Washington, D.C. Real quickly, I want to switch to the war in Iran real quick. Of course, you're the chairman of the House Armed Forces Strategic Forces Subcommittee. Scott Dejar is joining us. And so there's a lot to talk about as far as what is going on with the war in Iran. Obviously, you're watching this on a daily basis. Right now, the talk is, okay, so will there be ground troops, and should we try to take over Karg Island? Donald Trump is negotiating with a group in Iran, but there's other groups that are, sort of dismissing those negotiations. It's been a minute, Congressman, since you and I spoke, so just, give me where you're at with this whole thing.
Well, obviously, I'm knee-deep in this and get briefed almost every day. I don't know how many hours I've been in a skiff this week, talking about this Golden Dome, Epic Fury, and other things. And one, we're winning. The tough talk coming out of Iran is propaganda. The citizens are suppressed. They don't have internet. They can't communicate. If they come out in the streets, they'll get shot. But, in my opinion, if we don't get regime change there, then this is, really all for nothing. It's just mowing the grass, and we're going to have to deal with it again. So, I guess I would rather have the troops in the area and, have them and not need them than need them and not have them. And, we got to keep the oil flowing through there. None of us like paying more for gas. We're paying what we had to pay under Obama and what we had to pay under Biden. And people forget the luxury of the $2 gas we were just paying for under Trump. But now we're back to what we were paying under the last two Democratic presidents. But I don't want to end the war prematurely because the prices at the pump are up a little bit. I think the oil will start to flow again soon. I think the gas price will come down soon. But victory to me in Iran, and we're winning. Don't get me wrong. We're doing incredible damage to their ability to project any power, which would also shut down their terrorist groups, the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, because they're the ones that fund them, train them, and give them weapons, and they don't even have much left for themselves. And so we need to have a resistance inside Iran by the people of Iran. There's 90 million people there. The people brave enough to speak out, over 80% want regime change. So we need to somehow organize them. Israel has no problem with regime change. That's part of their strategy. For some reason, allegedly, it's not part of ours. I think it needs to be. We need to have a Iran that we can deal with, this peaceful in the Middle East, stabilizes the Middle East, could lead to the Abraham Accord being signed, and wouldn't that be wonderful? But I'm optimistic that things are going very well, and they're just clinging to their last bit of hope that they can save this regime. But I think their will to fight is fading, and I hate that people are paying more at the pump. But if we take Iran out of the fight, that's our third biggest adversary. This will all be well worth it, and hopefully deter China even further. We couldn't do what we're doing right now in Iran if we were in a conflict with China at the same time. So it's good to take this chess piece off the table, if you will.
Last question. The SAVE Act, of course, everybody's talking about, will we be able to protect elections moving forward? Voter ID, registration ID, the whole thing. Any word from your vantage point in Washington, D.C., where that lies?
If there's anyone in any state that isn't calling their Democratic senator or the 4 Republican senators that for some reason don't want to pass this, it's very rare in this country that we get 70-80% agreement on anything, but over 70% of Democrats, 95% of Republicans, 70-some percent Hispanics, African Americans, they all want the SAVE Act, and yet somehow the Senate is deciding it's not a good idea. It's kind of like work requirements for able-bodied people to receive benefits. That's an over 80% issue that the Senate continues to tank. So, I know our senators would certainly vote for it, but there's 4 Republican senators balking and a number of Democratic senators, and it can only be for one reason, and that's so that they can cheat in elections. And it sounds harsh, but I can't think of any other lame excuse that they've come up with that can't be debunked.
All right, Congressman, thank you very much for joining us at the last minute. And I know that it's going to be a very busy day and perhaps a very busy several days for our friends in the House of Representatives. And we'll hope to touch base again soon.
Well, whatever it takes to get it done right, we'll do our best.
All right, man. Thank you very much, and have a good weekend. It is 7:53, and Mason's got the news coming up at 8. Mason.
Iranian missiles and crash in Hawaii under investigation. Also, a lot of closures coming up here in the traffic. Got a closure in South Nashville off Lafayette Street between Fessler's Lane and Elm Hill Pike. And in Millersville, got a crash that's closed the road down at Springfield Highway at Williamson Road. And keep an eye out for a multiple tractor-trailer pileup with the road closed off 40 westbound between Cuba Landing, exit 137, and Burnsog Road, exit 133.
All right, thank you, Mason. It's 7:54. Dan Mandis here for my friends at Window Nation. Now, you know that I like Window Nation for a lot of reasons. I've got 4 of these windows in my home, including 2 in my all-important basement studio. Now, listen, if in your home that your AC or your heat maybe isn't as impactful or effective as it should be, well, maybe your Windows insulation is failing, and maybe you need to check out my friends at Window Nation. They specialize in brand new energy-efficient windows at a great price. Now, right now, here in the month of March, you can get up to 50% off all window styles when you go through Window Nation. Again, up to 50% off all window styles when you go through Window Nation. Also, they've got some great financing options right now, including $0 down and payments for as little as $199 every single month. Now, this is why I trust Window Nation. A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. They've got a 96% customer satisfaction rating. They've got over 45,000 5-star reviews. Don't forget those great deals from Window Nation. Up to 50% off all window styles and the terrific financing options, including $0 down and payments for as little as $199 every month. Find them online. Tell them Dan told you to reach out. WindowNation.com. That's WindowNation.com.
It's 8 a.m. I'm Mason Fleming with your top stories. Taking a look at traffic real quick again before we jump into this. Still got that closed road due to a crash over in South Nashville off Lafayette Street between Fessler's Lane and Elm Hill Pike. Over in Goodlettsville, got a crash with the closed streets at Springfield Highway between Williamson Road East and Williamson Road West. And a closure in Waverly, Tennessee off 40 westbound between Cuba Landing, exit 137, and Birdsong Road. Sources now tell ABC News that an America F-18 fighter jet narrowly avoided an Iranian missile while flying over the southern Iran in the recent days. ABC's Matt Rivers in the Doha with more.
It comes as Operation Epic Fury nears its 5th week, with reports the Pentagon is weighing sending an additional 10,000 ground troops to the Middle East. The president signaling he's in no rush to strike a deal, but Trump extending the deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz by 10 days. And if Iran doesn't comply, the president says he'll bomb their crucial power plants.
A deadly accident off the Hawaiian coast involves a helicopter run by a tour company. ABC's Trevor Alt has the story.
Officials say on Thursday around 3:30 in the afternoon, they were alerted that a helicopter had crashed into the ocean about 100 yards offshore of Kalalau Beach on Kauai. It's a pretty remote area, and we're told 5 people were on board, the pilot and 4 passengers. They say 3 people have died. The remaining 2 were taken to the hospital, and there's no word yet on their conditions.
There are still long lines at airports early this morning with travelers trying to get through security despite sickouts among TSA workers in the midst of the DHS shutdown that forced many of them to go weeks without pay. Leah Redfern was flying out of New York's LaGuardia Airport early this morning.
Well, I honestly was surprised because I thought that no one would be here at 3 a.m., but then I've seen it on social media how bad it was, and I thought that was kind of being blown out of proportion, but now that I've seen it, it's pretty bad.
And 42 days into the partial government shutdown, the standoff over funding for the Department of Homeland Security may finally be easing. The Senate voted before dawn today to move the process forward. ABC's Jim Ryan reports the chamber took action after weeks of gridlock. The measures now head to the House for consideration.
On a voice vote, the Senate agreed to fund the Transportation Security Administration, but not ICE or Customs and Border Protection. Back in the Senate, the finger-pointing continues. Senate Majority Leader John Thune.
It is now clear to everyone Democrats didn't actually want a solution.
Minority Leader Chuck Schumer.
This could have been accomplished weeks ago if Republicans hadn't stood in the way.
With Senate approval in hand, the House will now take up the measure to fund TSA and get airport security personnel paid again. Jim Ryan, ABC News.
That's the latest news, traffic, and weather coming up next. I'm Mason Fleming, WTN News. Got closures across the board here. Got a closure off Lafayette Street between Fessler's Lane and Fairfield Avenue. Got another closure at Springfield Highway between Williamson Road, east and west. Got a crash over with the right shoulder blocked in Whites Creek off 24 eastbound before at Old Hickory Boulevard North, exit 40. And a closure off 40 westbound between Cuba Landing, exit 137, and Birdsong Road, exit 133. I'm Mason Fleming. Traffic every 10 minutes every morning on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
.806 Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN for a Friday. So from what I understand, I've been forewarned that Chris Hand is coming in hot today at 8:35. He's all fired up, and I've been getting an earful from Sam because I guess last night was Pride Night at the Preds game.
Yeah.
And so the Preds were playing the New Jersey Devils, and there's a number of outrage points regarding Pride Night at the Preds game. Number one is they had this band called the Cowgays.
Yep.
Cowgays, the Cowgays, two guys and a woman. And they are apparently known for mocking Jesus, from what I'm understanding on the World Wide Web.
So I just Googled Cowgays. This is a side note.
Yes.
I swear to you, Google returned, these are results for Cowboys, Dallas Cowboys football team.
Okay.
Okay, that's a funny inside joke.
But the Cowgays, apparently they are controversial because I'm told that they mock Jesus. That's number one. Number two, you know when you go to Preds games and they have the intermission when there's a timeout or whatever, and they have a band in the stands?
The band stage.
The band stage. Okay, that's what they call it. Apparently the band stage, from what people are telling me on the super text line, they had some dude in makeup doing that whole thing.
Yeah, little drag.
So he was drag.
Pretty much.
So I'm just going to say this. Like, is there not a difference between, like, drag and trans and all that stuff?
I mean...
And just like plain old gay folks. Like, there is a difference.
Yeah.
And
there's an overlapping...
There's some overlap, but I mean, I know gay folks who are like, the whole trans thing, the whole drag thing, that's not us.
That's my father-in-law. My father-in-law is gay, and that's... I put him in what I call the old school, and he does not associate himself with that. He does not like how it disrespects his faith. And as you know, when he and I have had personal conversation about that kind of stuff, it really upsets him. And so it's not a family-friendly environment. And then specifically to Nashville, the point that I hope is going to get made, it's, across the country in some aspect of this is, this was a celebration of a lifestyle and things that was what a shooter believed in when they went into Covenant School and killed 6 people, which today is the 3-year anniversary for that. And I can distinctly remember when that happened. The organization did not hold up Pride Night. They went full ahead with it. That was just weeks later.
So part of obviously there's a lot of outrage points, as I would say, but apparently, and you were telling me, and I don't want to blow what Chris is going to say, but from what I understand, Chris got some promo offers for this game. No mention that it was Pride Night.
That's my understanding. Yeah.
See, that's another thing. Like, if this is here's the deal. If this is what the Preds want to do, okay, it's a private business, and if this is what they want to do, knock themselves out. But you're turning off your fan base. I'm just telling you, you're turning off your fan base. That's number one. Number two. if you tried to hawk your tickets and you didn't tell people that it was Pride Night and that you're going to have, some dude in makeup singing on the stage in the stands, or that you're going to have the cowgays out there singing. Was it the national anthem?
Yeah, they sang the national anthem.
They sang the national anthem. And, they are known, apparently, from what I'm told, from what you're telling me, they mock Christianity. That's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
If they were not open and upfront, from what I'm being told, if they were not open and upfront with what was going to be happening at the game, there's a lot of reasons to be ticked off at the Preds. And I like the Preds. I do. But if this is what they want to do, that's fine. But there's going to be a reaction to it. And they should know that. And
well, even if we take our personal feelings about it aside, like let's take how we believe to be, a family themed night, what we would consider to be, family oriented fun is going to be different. That's okay. But you don't want to give the internet trolls the fuel, right? You never want to step in that. And your team is called the Nashville Predators, and you're going to host a Pride Night. And so the memes have just they have just flown. They're doing John Hamm from Mad Men. We'll call it Gay Predators, like all this stuff, and it's unhelpful. Then you turn around, your nickname for your arena is called Smashville. You're giving people ammunition that it's not going to end well, regardless of people's religious beliefs or their personal feelings about it. Trolls are going to troll.
Have all the hockey teams, are they all doing Pride Night? Like, I know that the teams are basically, they're forced to do this.
Well, at this point, it's up to the organization. It's my understanding the NHL banned the wearing of them. It all kind of blew up over Ivan Provorov when he played for the Flyers. He kind of used his Russian Orthodox face as a reason to say, I'm not going to wear that in warmups. It was a whole controversial thing. James Reimer was a goaltender in San Jose. He wasn't going to do it. So the NHL said you can't force players to wear that. But now you've got these people keeping track of, well, who's got the rainbow tape on their stick in warmups? Who's an ally to me? And trying to marginalize all these people that aren't participating in it because they don't want stuff forced on them. They're trying to go out and play hockey. And so a lot of teams used to have it. Some of them kind of done away with it. I wish more teams would take after baseball. Baseball's done a good job of getting that crap the heck out of their games.
Right.
But it's all about personal choice. Some people were trying to point out that Predators player Steven Stamkos, he's only got white tape on his stick, guys. He must hate gay people.
So they're going to try to cancel. Like if you aren't full in with a rainbow stick, then they're going to try to cancel you.
Exactly. If you don't participate, then you must hate me, and that's the perception that people are drawing from this. It's just a divisive, controversial thing.
The whole thing is divisive.
You don't need to do it. There's no reason to do it.
Yeah. Well, Chris is going to come loaded for bear. Or loaded for Preds or whatever he's going to do coming up at 8:35. Looking forward to that. As a matter of fact, I think the whole thing is just silly. And I don't know why we keep having to do this, but whatever. If this is what the Preds want to do, it is their business. It is their fan base. And if this is how they want to spend their time. But I think not telling people, if that's true, that they didn't tell people that it was Pride Night and they were trying to, sell last-minute tickets or, send out promotional emails and so forth, and they didn't tell people. I mean, that is a betrayal. That is a betrayal of their fan base. So anyway, we'll get Chris's opinion on it, I'm sure, coming up at 8:35 on Super Talk 99.7. All right, coming up, I do have some remaining audio from Joe Kent. And he was on Sean Ryan's podcast. They're talking about, very specifically now, they're talking about Carg Island. I've got some of that straight ahead. Coming up on 8:15, time to check the roads on WTN. All right, it's coming up on 8:15. As far as your weather, mostly cloudy, breezy, a couple of afternoon showers and a thunderstorm possible, high of 71. Saturday, high of 61, dry air as well, warming up to 75 and breezy on Sunday. Thanks for listening to Super Talk 99.7 WTN. All right, so Joe Kent. Joe Kent, very controversial figure these days, as you know. He was head of Trump's counterterrorism before he quit because he decided that he could not, in good conscience, continue to support the war in Iran. He actually never did support the war in Iran. And he says that Donald Trump is being led by the nose by Israel. And so you all know all of that. He was on Sean Ryan's podcast. This is audio only. And let me see, 8:15. I can play all this. It's been a while. I'm going to try to play all my cuts real quickly. This was Kent on Sean Ryan's podcast. Here's part of what he had to say.
We have a drastically different strategic goal than the Israelis do. So we will say that Israel is our ally in this. They're basically our co-equal in this. People like me will say, actually, we're not really even co-equals. They're leading because we're having to react to them. But either way, we're basically joined at the hip with the Israelis. Now, the problem is they have a much different strategic goal and a much, I'd say, higher threshold and tolerance for chaos and bloodshed.
And I do believe that we are joined at the hip with Israel, and I don't see that as a bad thing. Many years, though, we have been allies with Israel. That has led us down that road. It is also true, though, that Israel does have as much to gain from a neutered Iran as we do, but so does the rest of the world, as a matter of fact, and certainly the Middle East. You know, sometimes I do feel, and I did say this earlier, that, you know, people are looking at this in a vacuum. Like all those years that Iran funded terror just never happened. It's like we just invaded an innocent country. The people of Iran are innocent, but their leaders certainly are not. Then he talks about, Kent talks about Israel's main goal being survival.
As critical as I am of our relationship with the Israelis have a very clear strategic goal, and that is to take out this regime lock, stock, and barrel. That's to get rid of the Ayatollahs, the clerical class that rules over, and then also the IRGC, which is a huge lift. It's a big country. Those institutions are massive. They've got a lot of support, but that's the Israelis' goal. The Israelis don't really care necessarily if that happens and Iran then slips into chaos and the Straits of Hormuz remains inflamed and there's a migration crisis, there's an ongoing war. The Israelis don't care about that. They care that the IRGC and the Ayatollahs can no longer fund their proxies or cause them problems inside of Israel.
I will tell you that Joe Kent, he's got a lot of fodder for people who are anti-Israel or at the very least looking side-eye at Israel as it relates to their role in this war and whether or not they did drag Donald Trump and America into this conflict. Iran, of course, did fund the attack against Israel. Israel has been battling for their very existence for as long as I can remember. So Israel has no choice but to do what they need to do. And I do understand, though, because I do see that there's both sides, two sides to this whole Israel discussion. More from Joe Kent.
So again, you've got us footing the bill, doing the majority of the combat, doing the dying, doing the fighting. We have a very, very murky strategic objective, whereas the Israelis are driving this. They're driving essentially our commitment of combat power. They're driving us having people lose their lives. They have a very clear strategic objective. And this is why I say the number one thing we have to do in order to get out of this is to restrain the Israelis and get our relationship with Israel straight. Otherwise, it's all going to be for naught, and we're going to continue to get sucked in further and further.
You know, I'm sorry, but I don't buy it. I appreciate and respect Joe Kent's military career. He's a really smart guy. Clearly, he knows, obviously, far more about the military than I do. But I also don't necessarily buy into the whole thing about how Israel is, led us into this war and they are pulling the strings. I don't. Now, things may or may not be going the way that Donald Trump anticipated or planned, but, we're still only, 4 weeks in. And so we'll have to ultimately see where this goes. But I think that, and we were talking to General Dick Newton earlier today, where he's talking about how, we're clearly winning this war. I've gone through the differences between winning the war militarily and winning the war from a political standpoint. We'll have to see how this whole thing plays out. One thing they did mention that Kent and Sean Ryan, who I also respect immensely, feel that we don't necessarily have a goal in mind with all of this going on, according to the clip that I heard. Listen.
Yeah, so we just list off the tactical punch list of things we want to bomb to take out so the Iranians don't have any more. And to me, that's not a real strategic goal.
So the goal was to neuter Iran and their attempts to create nuclear weapons. The goal was to stop the terrorism. The goal was to degrade their missile systems because they have an incredibly robust program. And by the way, Joe Kent, we just found out in the last several days that Iran has been lying about their abilities with their missile systems. It turns out they have a far longer range than Iran had admitted to. We spoke about this before many times. As a matter of fact, that Iran has been trying to enrich their uranium up to nuclear levels of 60 to 90%. If you're enriching for civilian or research, you only need to do 5% or 20% respectively. So, I'm going to be honest, I didn't watch the entire thing. I think I probably watched, maybe half of it. But, again, it was one of those things where clearly these two guys, Sean Ryan and Joe Kent, they're on the same wavelength. And that's fine. I mean, I like to listen to all of the opinions. I just happen to disagree. They also spoke about how Kent was quoted in the Washington Post talking about the dangers of trying to take Karg Island. This is where I really paid attention, stood up, paid attention, because they have a very specific fear with our boots on the ground on Karg Island.
This is you quoted. I just think that would be a disaster, Kent said, of deploying U.S. troops there. It would essentially be giving Iran a bunch of hostages on an island that they could barrage with drones and missiles. Are you the only person up there that's thinking straight? Because that's exactly what would happen. 100%. You're putting U.S. service members in a fishbowl for Iran to kill because they are stranded on an island.
Yeah. I mean, this is our strategy. It sounds like Lindsey Graham. I mean, Lindsey Graham was on the Sunday shows yesterday talking about how great it would be. It would be just like Iwo Jima. I mean, just insanity. And I mean, I don't think the people who are pragmatic and are expressing their concerns, I don't believe they're being listened to.
So that is part of what, of course, we have 8,000 or so troops there. We got more headed there. We got a lot of troops headed to the region. Karg Island is the biggest discussion point. It seems to me like right now, Karg Island is the biggest discussion point. Should we try to take over Karg Island? I do find it interesting. They did talk about how President Trump is listening to Lindsey Graham. He's listening to Ted Cruz, a couple of guys who, certainly Lindsey Graham, who I loved what did Tim Burchett say? Burchett said something about, what do you think about Lindsey Graham? And Burchett said, that Lindsey Graham gets into a bar fight and he wants to nuke an entire region. I mean, that's and Tim Burchett is absolutely right when it comes to Lindsey Graham. But they do talk about how taking the island, Karg Island, is risky because, Iran's oil exports flow through Karg Island. But here's the thing. You look at a map, you have to get our naval ships to Karg Island in order to take it over, apparently. And they have to go through the Strait of Hormuz, and that is precisely where Iran has been laying their mines. And, some of the research that I've done and some of the articles that I've done, apparently demining waters is not necessarily one of our strong suits, from what I understand. There's probably people that would disagree with me on that, whatever. But, once we get there, as Joe Kent says, we'd need thousands of troops on Karg Island to be able to hold it. Now, that would mean that we would be in range of Iran's drones and their missiles, but I would counter that they don't want to do too much damage to their own island either, because it is critical to what they need to export oil. Here's more from Joe Kent.
Once they get our troops on the ground there, they're going to be able to kill some of them. We're going to take losses. And then we fall back into that cycle. Once we take losses somewhere, we say, oh, no, now we can't leave. We have to stay to avenge our fallen. It can't be all for nothing. We have to stay. We have to keep fighting. We saw this over and over again in the GWAT. Every single time we talked about any kind of withdrawal in Iraq or Afghanistan, it was the same argument. We've lost too much here. There's still more that we could do. So, I mean, in terms of the Karg Island, that makes me nervous because I have heard so many people like Lindsey Graham and others that are not military people, that are not in the Pentagon, that are not reading intelligence every day, talk about it very flippantly. Like, oh, we'll just take that island. We'll just take their oil. I want to tell you guys, like, it's not 2003 anymore. You can't just put guys there and they'll occupy it. Like, there's ballistics, there's drones. They would be sitting ducks.
Yeah, sitting ducks. That's what I heard. Many analysts, by the way, have said this, that the taking of Karg Island is a huge military operation. Difficult to say the least. One more audio bite here. There was also a discussion of who is it that the president is taking advice from? A couple of senators did come to mind. I mentioned them a few minutes ago.
Why is he taking advice from Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz and whoever else that's just career bureaucrats?
This is the problem.
And then you got a guy like you in there with tons of experience in war, in intelligence.
Yeah. And there's others too. There's plenty of us in there that can give him much better advice. I just hope the president reflects, and I know he's mad at me. I hope he reflects, and I hope he looks at the advisors he has around him currently that got him to the state that we're in right now, because we're not in a good state. He knows that, and he needs to start listening to people that are going to give him better advice that can give us a clear pathway out of this.
Who are some people that would give him better advice other than yourself?
Vice President DNI Gabbard and their teams, I think, are absolutely key.
The vice president and the DNI.
And the DNI, yeah. And there's good people at the Pentagon that can give you options.
So he's not taking advice from his own vice president?
I don't know. I wasn't at the vice president's level. I think they have a good relationship.
So it's worth noting that J.D. Vance and Tulsi Gabbard, the DNI, both have been very cynical of us getting involved in foreign wars. And so I think that's why he says that if Donald Trump is not listening to Tulsi Gabbard, which there are reports that he's not, if he's not listening to J.D. Vance, I believe that he probably should, just to get as many voices in there and diverse opinions. But I think J.D. Vance has been on record as saying that he supports what the president is trying to do. And for what it's worth, I know I just peeked at the super text line. Sean Ryan is a guy that I respect, but I do understand that you do have Joe Kent. He is accused, is under investigation for being a serial leaker, a BSer as well. I also know that his tune has changed over time on Iran, and that politically he's been all over the place. He was a libertarian for about 7 years. Then he was a Democrat for a couple of years, then becoming a Republican. So he has been all over the place. But you know what? I've had my own political journeys as well. Maybe some of you have too. But I just think that it is important to get all of the voices out there. Boy, am I running late. But I think it was worth it to play some of that audio. It is 8:27, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7. I've got a date that I need you to keep in mind. It is Saturday, May 30th. It is the open house at the Glock store. I'm going to be there. Murphy Show, I believe, is going to be there. Chris Hand is going to be there. You should be there as well. They do these open houses annually, every single year. And basically what happens is they get a whole bunch of vendors out there. They've got some food trucks out there as well. And they've got all kinds of great giveaways, too. And if you want to purchase new guns, if you want some accessories, if you want some ammunition, if you want to win some things, you can. They've got a bunch of giveaways at the Glock store's upcoming open house. It's their annual open house. It is coming up on Saturday, May 30th. They're working on it right now. So you want to keep that date open. Again, Saturday, May 30th. Come on out and say hello to me. Say hello to Chris Hand and also Matt Murphy as well. We'd all love to see you there. They got guest speakers too. It is just a massive event. You walk in, there's people all over the place. There's great deals and specials going on all over the place. Giveaways too. You don't want to miss this. If you only go to one real two-way event of the year, go to this one at the Glock store, their open house. It is Saturday, May 30th. Check them out online. It is glockstore.com, shoot270.com. Tell them Dan Mandis told you to say hey.
It's 8:30. I'm Mason Fleming with your top stories. Most of the closures here in and around Nashville are causing most of our backups today. Got a closure here in South Nashville off Lafayette Street between Fessler's Lane and Fairfield Avenue. Also in Goodlettsville, got a closed road there with a crash from Springfield Highway between Williamson Road, east and west, causing a lot of backup. And a big one over in Waverly, Tennessee, with a closure due to a crash with multiple tractor trailers and a passenger vehicle, at least 2 overturned at 40 westbound between Cuba Landing, exit 137, and Birdsong Road, exit 133. Also got a crash with right 2 lanes blocked off 40 westbound before Fessler's Lane, exit 212. Over in Whites Creek, got the right shoulder blocked off 24 eastbound before Old Hickory Boulevard North, exit 40, and an injury crash off Nolensville Pike at Glenrose Avenue. Keep an eye out on the roads as we're heading into town this morning, keeping a lot of slowdown as we're moving through here on our Friday morning. That's the latest news, traffic, and weather coming up next. I'm Mason Fleming, WTN News.
.836, Nashville Morning News. Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. Listen, when something goes wrong in your home, you want the team that shows up fast, fixes it right, and yes, treats you like family. Now, that is my friends at Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. They are your trusted pros for total home comfort, and right now is the perfect time to upgrade. Now, when you purchase a 16-SEER high-efficiency HVAC system or a whole home repipe, Busy Bee is going to give you a Yeti Tundra 45 cooler absolutely free. And by the way, this month only, here in the month of March, Busy Bee has TVA rebates available for tune-ups and unit replacements. And even better, when you utilize those rebates, their team is going to file all of that paperwork for you. That's right. No hassle, no headaches. And if you want even more savings, do what I did years ago. Join the Beehive Club membership and keep your home humming year-round. Members get priority scheduling, discounted repairs, free annual HVAC and plumbing checks, extended warranties, and peace of mind knowing your equipment is always running at its best. 615-775-7833, 615-775-7833, busybeehvac.com.
Beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's
37 minutes past the hour on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. My name's Chris Hand.
Would you be mine?
Can I be honest with you? Yeah. The Mr. Rogers song, it's lost a lot of appeal for me.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't want people to be your neighbor?
It's just that the word neighbor, I feel like, has been weaponized against me because of
That's true.
Democrats in Minnesota.
Oh, that's fair.
I was really playing it because of Dan's cardigan.
The cardigan is very neighborly. Dan, there was a backup at the coffee machine, at Wally's Bean Machine. So Dan had to go retrieve his mug before we got into the break.
Next contract negotiation, I want my own Wally's Bean Machine.
Can we get one in the studio?
That's what we need.
Send Wally an email.
I think we'll be in your studio more than you guys are.
Well, okay, yeah, because the funny thing was, I mean, I went in, I kid you not, 3 times. And every time there was somebody in there. Now, one of them was a boss, so I chose not to, yell at him. But that's okay.
But you let the interns from the country station have it, didn't you? Dan is ruthless with the interns.
He told them, whatever you do, don't play the cow gaze on your radio station.
He said, you guys are responsible for last night, aren't you?
Anyway, moving. Yeah, so you want to talk about...
I do.
Yeah, so Chris is all upset because...
I'm a bit miffed.
You're a bit miffed at the Preds.
Yeah. So they have Pride Night last night, and I didn't know it was happening, but I happen to get promotional emails every now and again because we've gone to games. And I was like, they didn't say that in the email, because my wife and I will randomly look at them, and that's kind of like, honestly, that's how we decide if we're going to go or not. If we have a free night and we have, the extra cash flow and the tickets are cheap, we'll be like, yeah, let's go. Well, that's how we decide. It's very random. It's very sporadic. We're not huge fans, but the kids love it. So, we'll do it occasionally. So we get the email, and I'm looking at it, and I showed it to Dan for confirmation. There's no mention of Pride Night on the email that they sent yesterday, and they sent it at, they sent it at 10:48 a.m. So their last push for tickets yesterday, no mention of Pride Night.
Now, why wouldn't they mention that?
Aren't you proud of it?
Yeah.
Isn't this a ticket mover?
It seems to me like they didn't want people to know that it was Pride Night because, I don't know, for whatever reason, they think their last-minute ticket buyers are not going to be hip to Pride Night.
So then I went on the calendar. I went to the website, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the buy tickets calendar, and I went to the day. No mention of Pride Night. I click through. Now I'm in the Ticketmaster line to get tickets. No mention of Pride Night. The only mention of it on the website for the Predators was hidden in the community section. And to be fair, there was a tweet from Bridgestone and there was a Facebook post from the Preds earlier in the day. But I don't follow Bridgestone Arena, and I'm not on Facebook.
Right.
And the odds of you seeing that, I feel like, are very slim. Like, it should be blatantly stated when you're buying the tickets. Because if I had showed up there last night with my boys, I would have been furious.
Right.
Like, I would have lost my mind. That is not what we're coming to a hockey game to see.
It feels like a betrayal of trust.
It really does.
Yeah.
And it's like...
Because it's not like we're talking about, I don't know, a free wristband night or whatever. I mean, this is a cultural issue.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it seems like they're just trying to sneak it in under the radar and get in and get out. But it's just, it's insane. It's insane. And then they played the Devils, which is a bit on the nose, don't you think?
Yeah. Here's the deal. Do they, I think these organizations are forced into this. You know what I mean? Like, first of all, Pride Night. And by the way, and I stated this clearly, the Preds, they can do whatever it is that they want to do. They're a private business. But number one, it's gay pride. It's not trans. But it seems like they always seem to have, sort of like a trans theme.
Yeah. Well, there was a dude in full glam singing with the cow gaze, singing the national anthem.
That's not gay. That's trans. And I realize there's overlap and whatever. But all I'm saying is that there is a difference between the two.
This is a lifestyle choice that, as a Christian, I think sentence you to hell. Like, all things aside. And I think that it is the most loving thing that I can do as a Christian to tell you that your lifestyle is going to lead you to that direction. And if I was to show up and unbeknownst to me, that's the lifestyle they're promoting, I would have lost it. And then it's like, so do I have to do extensive research every time I go to a Preds game now? And go check the community section and check the Facebook and check all these different things to make sure that they're not going to force an ideology down my kids' throats when it's supposed to be a family-friendly atmosphere?
Didn't social media, because I know that Sam and I were talking off the air, social media went crazy on this, and people were making fun of, I guess they had a specific logo change for the night.
Yeah, well, they did a Pride logo, and then everybody was calling them the gay predators.
Yeah, the memes were flowing like crazy. Like I was saying earlier, the John Hamm one, that was a real one someone made. Like in Mad Men, the marketing pitch, and they've got the logo. How about gay predators? And it's like, it's not going to be well received when also your nickname for your arena is Smashville. Come on, people.
Also, know your audience.
Yeah,
well, that's what I said earlier. Know your audience, and that's what I think they get strong-armed into this by the activist groups.
But like, if a gay person likes hockey, how does not having a Pride night impact them going to the game?
I will say this. So if you, and because I've had conversations with folks that I know that are gay, and if you are gay and there's like gay pride night, but then it got more of a trans theme, that actually makes some gay folks upset because they don't want anything to do with the trans culture.
What was it, Dave Chappelle? It was like he did a whole bit on LGBT. It's like the L's don't like the G's, and both of them don't like the B's, and all three are wondering what the hell's going on with the T's.
Yep, and that's the point. Now,
could I just say on the hypothetical though, this would have been my guest reaction if let's say you'd taken the boys. I could picture Brooks walking in there like this.
Gay. Gay. No, I don't think we would have done that. I think we would have turned 180 degrees and walked right out of there, though.
Well, would you have demanded your money back?
Yes, 100%. I would have put up an absolute stink.
Yep.
And I'm not the guy that would play the radio card very often, but that would be the time where I would have thrown it down.
You would have said, "Do you know who I am?"
No. I would have just said, "I'm going to roast you on my radio show tomorrow if I don't get my money back." And then, spoiler alert, I'm roasting you anyway.
Yeah.
What about the cow gays? So,
boy,
this is again, it's like there's layers to this, and it gets worse and worse and worse. So, for the band to be named the Cow Gays in the beginning, it's like, oh my gosh, are we really doing this? And one of them's wearing like a Macho Man Randy Savage jacket with the tassels, and then he's got full female makeup on with a beard. How do I explain that to an 8-year-old boy? How would you explain that?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
So then I was in the process. Me and Sam were texting back and forth last night. I kept him up way past his bedtime.
The game did that.
I decided to make myself more angry.
And me, thank you.
And I went and I was like, okay, well, what music do the Cow Gays play?
Mm-hmm.
And the first song I found, their new single, it literally is like, I'm super gay and Jesus is totally cool with that. I'm like, no, my friend, he's not.
I don't wish I wasn't gay no more. Clap your hands for Jesus. Hallelujah, praise the Lord. I don't wish I wasn't gay no more.
So basically, they're mocking Christianity.
Yeah. They haven't read the book, Dan.
They haven't read the book. They haven't read the book.
I don't even think they got through the Cliff Notes version because I think it's pretty well established.
Yeah. Everybody, of course, on the super text line, as you can imagine, when is straight pride night, not allowed to do that, obviously. So
I just don't understand, like, why do we need to do any of this?
I don't know.
Like,
because it's they're forced into it by the groups.
If a gay guy likes hockey, like, cool, dude, go to a game and enjoy hockey. Like, you don't need it to be more gay if you already like it.
Well, and the thing that I've pointed out to Dan earlier, and like people are doing online, is the crazies keep track of who does and doesn't participate. and they make lists. They make their notes of who they think is an ally and who they think hates them. And they start to form these really weird preconceived notions about players simply because they don't put rainbow tape on their stick.
I mean,
That's so dumb.
To be fair, though, I'm also making lists, and I'm also coming up with preconceived notions about these players because only one of them, there was only one Nashville Predators player that didn't put the rainbow tape on. Stamkos.
That's
it.
Okay.
So.
And no one's going to tell that man he has to do anything. He's got 2 Stanley Cups and is currently leading the team in scoring. So people can just.
But where's the rest of the team on that? Like you're telling me every guy on that team is okay with this ideology? Let's get him some tampons for the men's room. Let's do that next too, like the Baltimore Ravens and the Baltimore Orioles, because we have to be inclusive.
At least the Orioles fans booed the governor.
Fair.
The Maryland governor got booed?
Yeah.
At
opening day for the Orioles.
Did he really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, probably had a lot of veterans there, and they didn't like that he was trying to. What was it he tried to do? Oh, God. He had some stolen valor
about
issues.
his service.
Something about a medal that he got. He said that he got a medal for being wounded, and he didn't get it, and then they gave it to him as like, here, just take it. Remember that whole thing?
Yeah.
It's okay. I can't remember now, but it didn't look good for him.
Oh.
So anyway, but it doesn't look good for the Preds.
Why would they do it? I just don't understand. Nobody. It didn't like. I would love to see the post game analysis. Like, did you have more ticket sales because it was Pride Night versus the Devils than you had on another night versus the Devils? Did you do it versus the Devils on purpose?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Come on, what are we doing?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's against their brand, but why these places, why these teams decide to do this? Remember the Dodgers last year, the year before. Remember when the Dodgers had
the nuns in drag,
the weird A nuns out there?
What was it? The Sisters of
Perpetual Suffering.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's pretty
it's
pretty accurate. It's pretty accurate, actually.
I'm sure it doesn't feel good to have 3 inches of makeup on in the San Francisco, LA heat in a nun outfit.
But and at the same time, I expect that out of LA. Like, that doesn't shock me.
No.
But we're supposed to be. My pastor says it all the time. Like, we're the belt buckle of the Bible Belt, right?
Yep.
If that's true, our pants are around our ankles because what the hell are we doing?
Private business, they're going to do what they're going to do. And as fans and as consumers, we can react the way that, we choose to react. I personally would not go to that game. I would probably react the way that you would have reacted if you had arrived at that. And I think that, when you have these kinds of events, you're just basically what you're doing is you're taking part of your fan base and you're saying, we don't care about how you feel.
No. But at the same time, they're saying to that same part of the fan base, we do care how you feel because we're not going to let you know what's happening in the marketing emails and on the calendar. You'd have to either be following us on Twitter or Facebook. You'd have to follow Bridgestone on Twitter.
Such a betrayal.
You know what I mean? Like,
Such a betrayal.
Like, it's not that they're just saying we don't care what you say. It's like they think you're too stupid to figure it out, and then they do care.
Well, or they want you to buy tickets. You show up, and then you've driven all the way down there. You've got the parking.
Learn the hard way.
You might as well just, since you've paid the ticket and you've paid the parking, then you're just going to stay and watch the game and not pay attention to apparently the guy in makeup and
a couple guys in makeup
and dress. Was he in a dress too?
Well, so there was the Cowgays lead singer,
flamboyant,
and then there was the guy doing his own thing on the band stage. So but it also is a betrayal in a sense of. All they did to honor the victims of the Covenant school shooting was put the school's logo on their helmet and a little sticker on the bottom corner. And then a few weeks later, they had Pride Night and blew right past the fact that was somebody who celebrated that ideology. It was part of that lifestyle that went into a school and killed 6 people on a random weekday. And I will never forget where I was in a college class at Tennessee State when that happened. My grandparents had attended that church for 10 years. And to completely ignore people's feelings in that aspect and continue to do it.
I get where you're at there. I do think that that's a bit of a stretch. Like, I think that we can have a separate case about Pride Night and whether or not you're alienating a fan base, and not say, well, you're mocking the victims of this shooting. I disagree with that. I don't like Pride Night, but I don't think them hosting a Pride Night 3 weeks after that shooting is like an endorsement of radical lunatic trans person shooting kids.
One of the things that I would be curious about is, with all of the negativity that the press got, did they have any kind of a response online to all of the rampant mocking of this?
Yes. The response was nothing.
Oh, all right.
Because that is in itself its own response. They didn't tell people to stop, but they're not also going to come after people and apologize.
Right. I wonder if they'll do it next year. Of course they'll do it next year. This is what they do.
Yeah.
So,
and if you look at the executives that are making these decisions, yeah, they're doing it next year.
By the way, real quick, did you watch the 5 yesterday?
Yes.
So I played a little bit of audio.
Did you do the Jessica Tarlov stuff?
No, I did. I played another cut where he was talking about the current Khomeini gay, that question from the 5. He roasted Jessica Tarlov, but I thought it was interesting. She wasn't there yesterday.
They said it was a prior engagement, and it was a prior engagement.
BS.
They didn't know, they said. Also, that was the same interview where he says, I'm going to sign an executive order to pay TSA. Screw these guys.
Yep.
And then what happens about 6 hours later?
Yeah, the Democrats.
They can't let Donald Trump come in and get the win.
They can't be the hero. They can't let Trump be the hero. And so that's exactly what they did. They just, they said, okay, we gotta come up with some sort of a solution. We can't let Trump be the hero.
Right.
And they did. Now, what I find interesting is that I had Scott Dejar on earlier. I actually disagree with the congressman, where, I think that it was the Democrats caved because they didn't get the reforms that they wanted out of ICE and the Border Patrol. And ICE and the Border Patrol, they got $75 billion. They're
good to go.
Funded for. So, I mean, the way
Isn't it through 2029 that they're funded?
Yes. So the way that I see it is that, and far be it for me to disagree with the congressman, but I mean, I see it as the Democrats caved. They didn't want Donald Trump to be the hero. They didn't get the reforms that they wanted. And ICE and Border Patrol, they're funded through 2029. So I think that now where we are is the House, now they've got to deal with this. This was kind of dumped in their lap. And so now we'll see where that goes.
But at the same time, when you look at like the Senate Republicans, we're like, oh, cool. So you guys are going to get another week off and not pass the Save America Act in
2 weeks.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Of course.
All right, we got to go. 8:55, Nashville's Morning News. Want to tell you folks about the Generator Super Center. We all know that we've had a rough 2026, and you really don't know what's going to happen. We are now in the midst of spring. We have spring storms and thunderstorms, and of course, summertime as well. We tend to lose power, and you need to get your own backup home standby generator from my friends at the Generator Super Center. Now, basically what they do is if your power goes out, then your generator from the Generator Super Center will turn your power right back on. Now, I learned how important generators are during power outages during my time in Indiana, where I had one there. And of course, here in 2026, we've all been talking about the power of backup home standby generators. Now, this is not only a huge investment in your home, but also in your family's safety. So you want to check them out at GeneratorSuperCenterofNashville.com. They are the nation's #1 Generac generator dealer. Find them online, GeneratorSuperCenterofNashville.com, 615-879-1952, 615-879-1952, GeneratorSuperCenterofNashville.com.